Everyone, and welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting for January 15th, 2019. Would like to call the meeting to order and ask everybody, including myself, to mute or turn off your electronic devices. And we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Trustee Dearborn will lead us in that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rob, would you like to check quorum for the upcoming meetings?
Certainly. Looking at the month of February, the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th, are there any conflicts?
What about the 22nd?
The 22nd is out.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep.
The 12th, I am out.
The 12th, you're out, John? Okay.
And I'm out the 5th.
Scott, the 5th. Okay. Okay, let us know. Thank you.
You got that?
I got it.
Okay. Public comment. Now is the time of the evening where anyone in the audience who wishes to address the Village Council on any item not on the agenda, you're welcome to come on up to the podium and share your thoughts with us. Would anybody like to address Village Council this evening in public comment? Seeing none, we'll move forward with reports. Trustees, and we'll start with John.
I have no report.
Andy? Ann? Bob?
No report.
Scott?
Nope.
Penny?
Bob and I will be at Pete's on Saturday from 10 to 11.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks.
Village Attorney?
No report tonight.
Village Manager?
No report.
Village President? I have no report this evening. We'll move forward with item number 6, approval of the agenda. Does any trustee wish to move an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, the consent agenda. The village clerk will read the items on the consent agenda.
Excuse me. Approval of Village Council meeting minutes for January 8th, 2015 regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated January 4th through the 10th, 2019 in the amount of $466,821.88. Resolution number R9, 2019 approving the purchase of a fire department staff vehicle. And resolution number R10, 2019 approval and release of closed session minutes for adoption.
Thanks, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Wedner?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Item number 8, the 2018 Preservation Awards. I'd like to bring our LPC Chair, Louise Holland, up to provide us with some background, and her partner, Chris Egg.
Christopher Marks.
Oh, Marks, I'm sorry. Wrong, I'm sorry, it was the wrong commission.
It's our commission.
I apologize. No, but I had another commission with another Christopher on it, so
You know,
anyway.
Christopher Ankt is one of our commissioners.
You can screw me up too, but mine's up here, so.
Good evening. It gives the LPC great pleasure to give 2 preservation awards tonight. The owners of these properties have enhanced our community, their neighbors, and the village. The first award goes to, and I know Scott is here. Is Aaron with you? Please come up. Oh, okay. Congratulations.
Oh.
Chip Hackley, right? Thank you. It's all history. This award is given under the rehabilitation designation. The project is sympathetic to the building's original design. Original plans and research materials are not available, but the project upholds the spirit of the building style, use of materials, and finish. Room additions or garages represent examples of rehabilitation. And Chip Hackley, the architect, said that originally built around 1930, this house received additions and renovations to the northeast and rear portions of the house over a 12-month period spanning 2015 and 16. The primary goal was to provide a proper master suite, family room, mudroom, attached garage, and terrace, as well as interior remodeling work required to accommodate the addition. And we congratulate you on your, there's the before,
Nice.
and there's the after. Very, very beautiful home. This is for Scott and Aaron.
That's for Chip.
Chip. And this goes to,
Other way around. Certificate goes to Chip.
he got it.
Okay.
And this goes to Scott. Oh, no. that-
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Very much.
The next award goes to Jasma and Rahul Guy at 935 Oak Street. Under, again, rehabilitation. This project is sympathetic to the building's original design, original plans, and research materials are not available, but the project upholds the spirit of the building's style, use of materials, and finish. And from the guys, our lovely home, the charming Blue House on Oak Street, as we are known around town, was built approximately around 1907, based on newspaper clippings used as part of the original in-wall insulation. Through the years, different owners have invested in strengthening the guts of the home, including replacing some of the original foundation, electrical upgrades, drain tile, etc. We bought the house in 2010 after falling in love with the energy that surrounds the house. So congratulations. Thank you. And let's see. And you are the architects. Congratulations to you.
Whoa.
It's quite a difference. I think you'll agree. And one more view. Unbelievable. It's great. And
Love
Here
the
is
TV
your
in the bathroom.
and your, thank you.
Great job.
The LPC will be presenting to you in a few months a matrix of landmark ordinances from other villages, including our own preservation ordinance. A series of recommendations from our commission will accompany this matrix. These recommendations have been studied and provide a few changes that will make our ordinance more effective. We hope that you will enact these changes. Our efforts will convince some homeowners to restore and enhance older structures instead of demolishing these homes. Basically, we wish to educate our residents and put ourselves out of business. If only a few residential demo permits are given every year, we will be a very happy commission. Members of the LPC that are here this evening, Katie Comstock. I don't think anyone else is here.
Beth.
Beth Ann. I'm sorry, Beth Ann Paputzis. And of course, Christopher Marks, who is the village associate planner and keeps us honest and on the right track at every meeting. Thank you for your attention to historic preservation. We hope that 2019, the sesquicentennial of Winnetka, will be a banner year to celebrate LPC awards. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Anybody like to share any thoughts or comments?
I just want to know when the Dickuses are going to have a neighborhood party.
You know, yeah. I'd like to say that, both of those houses are ones, how long have I lived in the village now? 30 years. And since I've lived here, they're just have always been outstanding homes. And every year I'm always relieved and happy to see that they're still there, and even as they've turned over. So thank you for keeping those houses and improving them, because they really are, they're part of the fabric that makes our village special. So thank you so much.
Chris, if I may, just for a second, and I'm so glad that Katie and Beth Ann are here and Louise, because I think I've now been the liaison to that commission for a year and a half or so, and I'm so impressed with the people that are on that commission. We have people from all different geographic locations in the community. We have different generations represented on the commission. But the common denominator is that we have a group of people that are really dedicated toward trying to preserve some of this architectural fabric of this community, not to the detriment of homeowners or property rights of homeowners, but trying to figure out ways in which we can encourage what the guys and the Dickuses have done here, because as I've mentioned, and we all have seen it in the community, we've seen far too many really beautiful homes not get that kind of attention. And it's hard to figure out exactly why, if it's economics purely, or if, as Louise mentioned, it's education, with the village maybe providing some encouragement for renovation. And so the efforts, really, Beth Ann's working really quite hard on this with the assistance of the commission members, but these efforts are really intended to bring to the council some ideas that could be implemented that, again, are, as Chris, you mentioned to the commission a few months ago, are carrot and not stick. And if Louise mentions, if we can, incrementally preserve some of these beautiful homes like we've seen tonight, I think it would be a great service to the village, and so many people in this community want that to happen. So kudos to this commission. They're working hard, and you're going to be hearing from them, before too long.
Ann? Andy? John? Okay. All right, well, I wanted to thank both awardees for the awesome work. I've lived in older homes here in Winnetka my whole time in town, and I know the amount of time and effort and money that goes into preserving something rather than simply tearing it down and building something new. And I'm a builder, so. But, a special shout out to the guys. I lived at 1037 Oak for 17 years, and I used to walk by that house, and as you know, the 1000 block of Oak, there are 2 remaining homes from when I first moved there. So on both sides of the street, there's only 2 homes left from 1991. And as I used to walk the dog down past this house all the time, I often wondered, yours and then the one next door, which is obviously gone now, right? But I often wondered how long it would be before that house came down, and was just so pleased to see that the time and the effort was put into it to save it, because it is a really special place, and I agree it has a good energy. So thank you very much. And thank all of you for coming this evening.
It's a great color blue, too, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
You should.
So, this is always a great evening when we do this. So, all right, but that said, we'll move on. Item number 9, ordinances and resolutions, we have none. Old business, we have none. And then new business. The council we're going to move down to the table at this time to kind of study session a couple items that are left on the agenda. So, you want to collect your stuff and move on down? check in back then. Okay. I know it's a little clumsy to start up there and then come down here, but, both of these issues require conversation more than they do deliberation. And I just always find it's really hard to have a conversation when you can't look at the people you're talking to. So I think this facilitates a little bit better discussion when we're at the table kind of looking at each other and able to freely exchange ideas. So, okay, with that said, item A is a request for code amendments for a proposed banquet facility at 915 Green Bay Road. Boutique Bites is requesting consideration of amendments to the zoning and liquor ordinances in order to locate a banquet facility in the Hubbard Woods Business District. Here to review the request and the associated code amendments is Community Development Director David Schoen. David, take it away.
Good evening. So we have a very intriguing business proposal here before us this evening that our code didn't anticipate, and so we're looking for you on direction in terms of your interest in pursuing amendments. They all have to do with the banquet facility aspect of the proposed operation, from a zoning ordinance amendment, liquor control regulation amendment, and their interest in having valet parking using the public right-of-way and public parking areas for parking related to the valet operation. So quickly go over the site. 915 Green Bay Road. It's on the east side of Green Bay Road between Tower and Gage Street. It's the former Antique Emporium space, which has been vacant approximately 6 years, I've been told. The first floor is approximately 10,000 square feet, and on the second floor, there's an approximate, an office that's approximately 1,000 square feet. The property is zoned, the underlying district, the general retail commercial district, the C2 district, and then the first 50 feet along the street frontage is zoned the commercial overlay district. The zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan designation, which calls for mixed-use development in this area, allowing for retail and service uses on the ground floor. There are three components of the operation: a specialty food store cafe along Green Bay Road, the banquet venue facility in the middle, and then a catering kitchen and storage that would serve also the specialty food store cafe and the venue space. Briefly go over the operation of each. The specialty food store cafe would be approximately 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. They would offer a variety of food items ranging from sandwiches and salads and quiches to also prepackaged meals that individuals could stop and pick up and take home to eat. They would also offer beer and wine. They initially proposed being open early mornings to early evening, 6 days a week, or 5 days a week, I should say. Would seat about 12 to 15 patrons, and there'd be 3 to 4 employees at one time. They would anticipate the customers, like other food store, cafe customers, would park on the street, and that the employees would take either public transportation or would park in employee permit spaces. They would get permits for their employees in the municipal lots. The second aspect is the banquet facility, between 3,500 and 4,000 square feet. They would have regular events that you would anticipate in such a facility, such as weddings, anniversary parties, whatever. They'd also have, on a less frequent basis, some multi-day meetings or conferences. They've indicated anyone using the space, though, however, would have to get a food and beverage package. So it's not just renting space, but it's also getting food and beverages from their services. The access, you can see there, would be off Green Bay Road. They would anticipate with some of these events going until midnight. They would have seating for 150 guests and a dance floor. Again, just to give you an idea of what that size is, as in our staff report stated that Minos is approximately 160 seats, Avli's 120, and Fred's Garage 110 seats. So just to give you a perspective on what we're talking about in terms of size. The catering, kitchen, and storage would consist of what you would anticipate: a kitchen, some office space, and then storage space for items to use for their catering service as well as for the venue space. There is a dock at the rear of the building that they would use to access, to operate the catering business out of. And as I previously said, the kitchen would also serve the specialty food store cafe and the venue space. The employees in this area, they would anticipate taking public transportation or, again, securing permits to park in municipal lots. As I said, the code doesn't currently anticipate banquet facilities. It's not addressed in our code. And so there would need to be an amendment to allow them as either a permitted or a special use in the C2 and the overlay district. We presented a possible code amendment in terms of defining what a banquet facility is. In essence, it also is defining what it's not. It's not going to be a performance space. So there can be live entertainment as part of an event taking place, a dinner event taking place there. And it's not going to be a dance hall, though people will be able to dance there as part of an event that's being held there. And that alcohol can be consumed on the premises as part of this banquet reception hall. Again, one of the decisions or directions we'd like to receive from the council is whether this could be allowed as a permitted use or a special use, or, again, needs to be studied further. If a permitted, step back, a text amendment to remind you, the council decides if it wishes to hold a public hearing on the text amendment or if it wishes to refer it down to a lower body to hold the public hearing and then secure a recommendation from them. That then would come back to the council. Related to that, if it's a special use, the code requires all special uses, given that part of this will be in the overlay district, that it would need to go to the Plan Commission for the public hearing on the special use request. So if that's the direction you're leaning towards or interested in pursuing, then it would make sense to refer the text amendment back down to the Plan Commission, indicating your interest in pursuing a special use as the allowed way, the way to allow the use, so that they could at the same time hold the public hearing on the special use application. As mentioned, we currently don't have a liquor classification that allows the service and sale of alcohol in such a facility. So we would either need to create a new classification or amend one of our existing classifications to make it a little more broad, so that alcohol could be served in the banquet facility. In terms of valet parking regulations, as I said, they want to use the public right-of-way on Green Bay Road for pickup and drop-off, and then there would need to be a place to park the vehicles, and they have suggested that it could be in the Hubbard Woods parking garage, or maybe there's other municipal lots that are designated for employees, but in the evening would be available that they could use. So in terms of, we don't have any process for considering that. One approach could be is establishing valet parking regulations, and we've provided you examples from nearby communities who have established such. This would be something that we'd have in place not only for them, but if there would be other uses, typically restaurants that may want to also have a valet operation, we would have something in place where we could consider those requests. Those requests generally have three components in terms of how do you regulate the pickup drop-off area, how do you regulate where they're going to park, and then getting the car to and from. And so if the council is interested in that, then staff would work on drafting some regulations to bring back for your consideration. And with that, we're looking for direction from the council in terms of you're interested in pursuing the necessary amendments for this business to move forward. In terms of the banquet facility, if you have any indication now in terms of how to allow it as a permitted or special use. And then the other two issues in terms of creating the additional liquor license classification and interest in valet parking regulations. The applicant is here this evening, so if you have questions or would like to hear from her, she'd be happy to address the council.
Right. Before we dig into this, I was wondering if anybody in the audience might have any questions about this before we move forward. Louise or Jeff? No questions? You can always join the conversation later if something comes up. I have one question before we get started. The community house provides a similar service and function on occasion, right? They have weddings, bar mitzvahs, and corporate events, and food is brought in, and dinners are served, and people drink, and I mean, I've experienced it there.
Mm-hmm.
Do we not have something that permits that, or is that just done under a broader special use that we've granted them, or?
Yeah, it would be under a broader special use in terms of a broader land use category that we would classify them under. It's educational, philanthropic, and something, I don't remember the exact category, but it wouldn't be a commercial banquet hall.
Even though they charge a fee
And that use category isn't identified use in the commercial districts, so it's not like it's a use that's identified in both the E1 district and the commercial districts.
Part of institutional zoning. Yeah, so the community house is an institution rather than a part of the commercial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a commercial.
And obviously, the use has never been defined, otherwise we wouldn't be looking at that component, right? I mean,
Well, the institution, I mean, the institutions are a category, but they're all, each one's different, so it's.
Right.
Yeah, right.
but they have the ability under their classification to do what they do.
Correct.
Okay. So, because the only question I have with this is, it seems to me we have something that functions kind of like this already,
Mm-hmm.
but yet it sounds like we're trying to create a new category that actually kind of already exists in town. in a different location, right? But
Correct, but it falls under a different land use classification that's allowed in that zoning district, but not identified in the C2 and C, and the overlay district doesn't allow use.
okay, just trying to see if we could
Sure.
lessen the workload a little.
I have a quick question just relative to this particular application, just so I understand a little better. That relative to the overlay district, is the banquet facility, does that fall within that, you know, the
50 feet?
Yeah, or is that outside? So
It falls within the 50 feet. I mean, based upon what they've submitted, and if it's close to scale, the building is 50 feet wide,
right.
and so the space doesn't go, the cafe isn't 50 feet deep, so part of the venue space would fall within the overlay district.
Okay. But if it didn't, I mean, I think it's great that they have up front, they've got a retail component. I mean, and then there is the banqueting facility behind that. To me, that accomplishes the purpose of our district, absolutely. Which is sort of
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, I look at this as more from the point of view of in the commercial overlay district, this is kind of a specialty food and beverage shop.
Right.
Right? And I think that those running the business are going to find that they're going to run out of space in terms of specialty food, knowing this community. I think you may find that you have to, you're going to have probably more demand than the space. But, you know, the whole focus is to have an engaging storefront and to have an engaging place where people can walk in. And I think that you know, I understand the idea of trying to have enough space for banquets and things like that, but I think you're going to run into a situation where your demand is going to be maybe higher than the space you've allotted. Maybe you can flex that, but
Did the applicants want to maybe, did you want to?
That'd be good to know.
yeah,
Have you guys looked online at their current space?
yeah,
Because it's beautiful.
yeah.
And
yeah.
it's something that would be really enhancing
Yeah.
of the community, in my opinion. And whether it's the banquet part of it or just the retail part of it. And if we're planning to do something similar.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah.
Well, it's a combo, that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
I mean, my only point was that in terms of one of the questions that you have is, should this go down to zoning and planning? I mean, I view this as more of a change in a permitted use.
Right.
And it's really changing the wording, which is going to come back to us.
Glad you-
So it
I'm
might
glad
as
you
well
said that.
just stay with us. We have the hearing here, and, you know,
Well, and you know, there are two existing categories that.
right.
So there's catering establishment with no retail or restaurant, that's permitted, and then the overlay special use. Well, this is the catering
Yeah,
establishment.
it's both, right.
With
With,
right.
retail and
Right.
restaurant, and then we've got restaurant, which is just permitted. It strikes me
Yeah.
that this is basically a restaurant with a catering establishment.
So what I think about, kind of on your thinking, I think, Chris, first of all, I'm all for it, let's try to make something work.
Yeah.
With, obviously, make sure other things are addressed. But there's restaurants in town currently that if I want to rent out
Right.
the restaurant, the back room,
You
we're
can do
closed
it.
today, we can rent it.
Minos does that.
Well, I don't want to say names, but.
But
So
that's
how is it
Yeah.
different?
Right.
That's,
if
Well,
they
that was, I
have
was
their
trying to
own
get my
cafe?
I
head
think
around
that's
that.
Andy's point.
that's
Yeah.
my point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
so
I
Well-
think it should just be permitted.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and not to say that we shouldn't perhaps correct our ordinance,
like to.
but, I mean, you know, a banquet facility is different than a restaurant that's occasionally rented out. So that it is different, but how can we adjust what we have to make it work?
But it's only different in that it may not be used every day of the week.
Well, its primary purpose is to be rented out as a, I mean, it is different. I mean, you know it's different. The question
Right.
is, what is relevant and how do we need to
I think your point is
discuss
that
it?
if it was a banquet facility to the street front,
Right,
you would have times when it was just sitting empty, which
Right.
we really don't want.
Right.
But having the 5-day-a-week retail there, activates the street, and then you've got kind of the banquet facility, which will even add more traffic, you know, as
And,
it gets
and
rented
actually,
out.
the difference is one where anybody can walk in and use it, and the other one, which is by invitation only. And what's great about this, it has a combination. So it has the front part where it has retail food, it has a restaurant, and then the back end has invitation only,
Yeah, so the only thing questions I wrote down was, when we looked recently at the Children's Gaming Center, one of our big concerns was noise. So how is noise affected by this after X amount of time or time limit to the neighboring people that might be living upstairs?
Well, no one's living upstairs.
I don't need anything next to them or upstairs or anything.
Yeah, so what's next to it?
Well,
Next door.
there's some office space. But I think, you know, in terms of it, it's a really commercial district right on the train. I mean, there's not.
I understand, but there's still a nuisance thing.
You're thinking
noise.
more of a band
Yeah,
playing
the
for
dancing
a
until midnight
banquet.
or 1 in the morning.
Are there
The noise that
apartments
comes out the front door
next
like we were
door?
worried about with the machines.
Well, when
No.
you come out and you leave, but no one's on Green Bay Road at that time.
So to the north is Walgreens. To the south, I don't know if there's any apartments.
But Walgreens has
So-
There's-
Who's on
upstairs.
top of Walgreens?
There's residential above
Yeah,
Walgreens.
So
So it's just something
really-
that will have to be considered.
Right.
I wouldn't even
when-
have thought about it if it wasn't for the dancing specifically noted and DJ or whatever else comes along. That
There
could
will,
be
there will be noise.
there will be noise. And most likely past the 9 or 10 o'clock.
Mhm.
And
And
of course,
it-
the other issue is,
So-
I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
So, yeah, so the other things to think about, it's a whole building code thing, I'm sure they have to go through that process. The floor loading, if you have a bigger banquet facility with dancing, toilet facilities for 150 people. What they have drawn looks a little small,
Mhm.
but that's just me. Just overall code conformance. And the big difference, I think, is the banquet facility is your valet.
Yeah, right.
Granted, other restaurants may want to do it someday. So as we do some kind of ordinance on the valet, also keep in mind, what if the property right next door also wants valet? And they have to kind of share their valet drop-off areas, just long-term thinking. Other than that, I mean, it's
Be
it's
a
an exciting
high-class
thing to
problem.
have, but you have to make sure there's a way to do it properly.
I mean, in terms of the valet, I think it's something the village should be moving towards anyway, given our parking issues. And then Toco is opening, I can't imagine they wouldn't be asking for a valet opportunity on the west side of the village. So I think it's something that we need to do. It's cold out. We have people who don't like to walk in the snow. You know, I would think valet would be something we'd want to get ready and be able to offer if we want to have a more vibrant scene where people actually go out in the winter especially.
And it's happening in the residential neighborhoods regularly anyway. I mean,
Right.
just over the past month, I've seen 4 parties that had valet services where they were parking cars a couple blocks away on the streets.
For a private party, or is a valet permit required?
No, it's not required.
It's not required.
No, and here the situation is different. They're asking to use what are now currently parking spaces.
Right.
For their valet
Oh, yeah.
for a valet operation for a period of time. So in that essence, we need to, what is that process of someone requesting to do that?
What spaces would those be? Where would
The
those
two,
be? Just
it'd be the 2 spaces probably right out in front of the building.
in front of the building, but I mean, where would the valet parking go? I mean, obviously the covered lot, but that's
Yeah.
a ways away. It's 2 blocks.
There's
two long
the,
blocks.
You hire
the parking
fit valets.
structure. Yeah, the parking
Right.
structure on the north end of the park. And then there's the village lot, which is by Zengler's and McDonald's.
On the other end.
Oh, that's right.
Not the Walgreens lot.
That's fine.
That's private.
So it would be just north, or just south, or further north. Those are the 2 spots. Is that, you look at your valet parking locations?
Looking at the city lots, yes.
Yep, and that,
Usually on a 150-person event, historically, they've had 20, 25 cars. That's right.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
The majority of the people, they're driven there, or they take Uber or whatever. So,
Right.
you know, we're looking at 20, 25 cars
Yeah.
historically.
Okay.
I mean, at weddings, people know they're going to be drinking, so we don't necessarily want to drive at the end of the night, so we really don't usually have more than 20.
How nice is that?
Yeah, that's
Isn't that great?
interesting.
I know. That's a good change.
Never thought of that.
Yeah. New opportunity.
So, okay, let's see if we can frame this up a little bit. I don't hear anybody who has a problem fundamentally with this particular use in this particular location.
Outstanding.
I think,
It's not a brew pub though, Andy. You know that.
I'm sure they serve beer
coming.
sometime.
I saw it on the menu. I saw it on the menu.
And,
And-
it's a cool use of that space.
Oh, it's great. I mean,
It really is.
and one thing I will say, and you will probably enjoy hearing this, is I have talked to 3 other business owners who have contemplated constructing this exact sort of space in town to serve exactly the need that you're looking to fill.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's validation in the marketplace, and, clearly a lot of people have been thinking there's a need for it in town here. And so I think you're going to find good subscription as you move forward on this, too. So, but acknowledging that we like it, and the one thing that struck me was the aggressive schedule to get them open in July. I cannot imagine that it would do the applicant any service, or the village for that matter, to send this thing down to Plan Commission for a 60-day turnaround before we ever see it again. So is there consensus that we'd rather keep it up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on how we.
We'll have plenty of time to roll up our
So that
sleeves
we're
and
not
deliberate
totally
it.
ignoring our boards,
Right.
you know.
Well, I mean, there's no DRB involved here unless they have an awning or something, right? So there's that. If we keep it here, then Plan Commission wouldn't see it. Certainly, the public would have a chance to weigh in on it when it came back as we deliberated on a zoning amendment. And just so I'm clear, David, you're sure that we've got to go through some sort of an amendment process here to facilitate this use?
Yes.
Despite what Andy and Scott have pointed out, that it seems to be consistent with uses already in there.
In terms of, as a banquet facility, they can be operated very differently. And so I would feel more secure that we come up with what the definition is of such a facility. That I think it's different enough from a general restaurant that I think you should take into consideration in terms of allowing it. So if we allow it, keep it here, that means as a permitted use, which means through the zoning process, there's no way to place conditions on the use. So we'd have to find other ways. So if we allow this as by right, something we suggested is that as by right, one of the conditions is that you need to receive approval from the community development director, we put, for a parking and valet plan. That a use just cannot go in without identifying how they're going to park the facility. So if there are other concerns you may have about the operation
Well, the
of...
noise, right? I mean,
Noise is the biggest, because even parking, if it was just a restaurant, we wouldn't care where those cars parked.
right.
I mean, obviously.
Well, we would.
But, it's only the valet that is bringing it up, so maybe the valet is a separate ordinance process that we do.
It should be anyway.
Anyway.
Obviously, we're
Yeah.
behind the curve on that
And
to
not
begin
track
with.
them down,
Yeah.
knowing that we're gonna work something out.
What
Right.
do we have for like live music in restaurants now? Anything? I
Well,
mean, we have our
Little
general
Ricky's
noise.
has- Little Ricky's has music, but everyone closes by 10 and then the sidewalks are rolled up. But, there are no windows in the banquet area, are there?
It goes through walls.
We do have a noise ordinance, right, which says you can't have noise beyond a certain distance after, what, 10:30?
It's pretty general and would be...
The big thing, you don't want the guy next door complaining the first 10 days of the
Right.
party.
What do
After they
we,
spent the time and money to build the place.
maybe what we ought to do, and it's not really specific to this particular applicant, is just in general, what would we want for that issue?
I'm sorry?
For
What do
the
we want?
noise issue, whether it's a restaurant or a restaurant with a catering establishment, which is what this is. I don't even think, we're calling it a banquet reception, I don't think it is. I mean, it is kind of, but it's a restaurant with catering
Right,
and
right.
a
I
reception.
mean, for example, if the kitchen happened to be in the middle rather than having the banquet room there,
Right.
it would be, there wouldn't even be an issue, right? Per se.
This will be
Well, no, it should be noise, but,
But it seems like the issue we're talking about is noise.
Noise.
yeah,
not
but
the
in terms of,
establishment.
the special
Correct.
use. In terms of
Correct.
special
It's
use, it wouldn't
noise.
be an issue.
And not
Right.
normal restaurant noise of like the kitchen dishes and stuff.
It's
Like entertainment.
The entertainment, music and dance.
Entertainment.
Yeah.
So
And-
how would we, what would we,
I mean, you don't want the neighbors in the buildings to the north and south,
right,
living above, to be disturbed,
Right.
you know, at, probably after 10 o'clock at night.
because, you know, we had the same issue.
So the question is, how do you make sure there's enough insulation and there's not enough, you know, not the noise?
We had the same issue with the arcade, so it strikes me as something that maybe this is the problem we're trying to solve for.
And sometimes you can, if you're looking at hour restrictions, you can differentiate between weekdays and
And
weekends.
weekends, right.
Weekends can usually go a little longer.
Unless someone's living there.
David, do we have, in our building code, are there standards for STC and various, between various uses? I know in most building codes, they have, you know,
I don't know that for certain. I'd have to look into it.
and then it would fall under the building department to make sure that those STC ratings were adhered to.
I mean, what happens at the Winnetka Community House? Like, that's right in the middle of a residential area, right? There are houses all around it, or at least on the side.
Yeah, but the music's in the middle of the building.
Though there are times when that music is, you can hear it in his house, I assure you.
I can't hear much in the
Well,
everything else going on.
Well,
Young
you
people.
can't get good until someone complains.
Well, right, and the question is, how much, what is okay and what is too much, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right, so it's a balance, right? If you
Right.
want to encourage the commercial activity,
Right.
you have to have a
Right.
little bit of stretch.
Right.
And, you know, it can't be just a pin drop.
Right.
You know,
Well, I'd like to go back, I mean, Andy mentioned the arcade, right? And when we were talking about the arcade, you know, we got down to specific decibels outside the facility.
And it was also like 10 o'clock closing time. That's
Right.
the problem.
Well, and that is, I would argue that arcade sounds are a little different than music. Not to say that we don't need to figure out how to be appropriate to the neighbors, but arcade, you know, the electronic sounds are particularly piercing.
It's a little
So-
EDM music.
Actually,
yeah.
it's the bass that is the real problem.
Is it? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
Yeah, whatever
it's
it is,
impossible to
it's-
control.
Yeah, right.
But the issue really is if the building code has standards for sound transmission between
Right.
uses,
Right.
then we have nothing to talk about, to be
Right.
honest with you,
Right.
because the building code will establish what the standards are between one space and another. And the STC rating doesn't measure decibels. What it measures is sound being transmitted from one space to another. And as long as you're within the range, it's considered acceptable. And I think it's probably 50 or 55 or 60. What do you think, John? I mean,
I'm not sure the numbers, but typically the noise is in the zoning ordinance, in the performance standards. Not a
And
building
it certainly,
code.
and it certainly would be different in a commercial district rather than a residential district.
Well, but it's a combination of the two. Right.
Well, yeah, but I mean, a residential in a commercial district is going to be different than residential.
100%.
Well, I guess
Yeah.
what I can, rather than trying to figure it out here, can we propose that staff
Yeah,
come back
right,
with
right.
a standard, whether
Totally.
it's decibels or this SDC or whatever,
Mhm.
looking at what are the buildings, you know, the living units in the proximity, and what do we think an appropriate standard is? I mean, I tend to agree that weeknights, 10 o'clock is probably appropriate, you know, Saturday night, Friday night, Saturday night, maybe it's, you know, later.
well, I'd hate to inhibit the business. I mean, if-
Right.
Well, that's where it'd be nice to
Right.
have maybe the business work with David
Yeah.
and his team, and let's understand it.
Brian's going to do a quick check on the building codes to see if we
And
if
the
we
applicant,
have
let the
the...
applicant maybe do some research on what they can do on their side.
And I guess
For the sound transmission.
what I was trying to get at
Right, if they
obliquely
want baffling.
is that it's not necessarily 24 hours a day. It always has to be the same low level that, you know, if you're going to have some.
Has the applicant thought of it? Have you thought of this, the noise issue?
It's one of the first things we brought up, actually,
You wanna come
at
to
the
the mic?
meeting,
Why don't you
that I
come on
really
up?
wanted to make sure.
Here comes that.
Come on up.
Thanks.
We're
Yeah.
friendly.
Great.
Sometimes.
Some people are.
Yeah, it's one of the first things that I brought up because I wanted to make sure that it wouldn't be an issue. During the week, I feel like 10 p.m. is fine. If anything, we may still have guests at the venue, but it's not like loud music is going on or anything. If anything, it's like a corporate dinner that's taking place, and, you know, maybe they're lingering for a little bit and they leave at 10:30, but it's not like, it's really just for the weddings, and that's typically on Friday and Saturday nights. Our weddings end at midnight, and then vendors come in after that, and they have 1 hour to load out completely. So the florist comes back, and any vendors that were there, because we need everything cleared out. So if we have a baby shower in the space on a Sunday morning, it's all cleared out and ready to go.
That's going out the rear anyway, though.
It's going out the rear.
And that kind of noise is something, you know, that's not an issue.
The noise level is not nightclub type level.
I was going to say, I mean, you got, what do you have in the venue? 2,500 square feet probably for just seating and dancing?
Correct.
I mean, that's a relatively small space. I mean, you have a band
It's a-
playing loud
it's a-
there, it's going to be blowing people up.
It's a wedding band, and these are more upscale events, and so people want to talk in there. It's a wedding, and they want to be able, they don't want to be yelling and shouting across the table. So the noise level is not a nightclub type. So that's, you guys are welcome to, if you want, in between, go to
Our current venue.
a venue, you
Yeah.
can see it, and maybe on one of the events, you can just stop by, so.
What do you got, Brian?
Yeah.
Man, boy, is he fast.
Are you looking at the pool room?
Put a disclaimer here, this is not
Circus.
isn't a particularly exhaustive search under the 2015 IBC, which we have not yet adopted, but are getting prepared to bring to you. There are standards under Chapter 12, Section 1207 regarding sound transmission. The language, I won't read it all to you, but it does seem to be addressing the transmittal of sound within a specific building from, say, commercial space to a residential unit within that same building. I'm not sure that this language would be clearly applicable to a building such as this, which is strictly commercial with residential units
Well, there's your difference
in a
in
nearby
use.
building.
What's the STC between uses?
That doesn't really, says sound transmission class of not less than 50
That's what I figured.
between,
You can make 50 happen.
Okay.
But I think what he's trying to point out, though, the difference is that's in a building that one person owns, and they have the residential upstairs, they
Yeah.
also own or rent.
Well,
You know,
I own a lot
people
of
know what they're
commercial
getting
space
themselves into.
with residential units above me. And in all cases, I'm required to adhere to IBC 2015, actually.
Agreed.
That's why I'm somewhat familiar with it,
Right.
because when you open a restaurant and somebody upstairs is complaining because they got their music cranked up, our friends from Thunder and Associates go out there and run a test to see what the transmission is between the one space and the other, and it's no different than this. But a 50 is an easy standard to hit, so I don't think it would be a real imposition for you to comply with the
I
code.
would just.
And knowing that the building code covers it, I think gives me a lot of comfort that we don't have to worry about it.
I think you do, because
Is it
it's not
possible
up to
to
the
run a
village to say
test?
it's okay.
Is it possible to run a test in this space and measure it next door?
Oh, yeah.
So that you all know what
Not even measured, just
what we're talking
talk
about?
to the person that lives there.
Well, no, but I'm saying before they begin
No,
their
because
build
it's
out.
so subjective.
Well, they're gonna be the first ones knocking on our door.
Right, I mean, when you
Right.
put stuff in it and when you
Right,
put-
that will absorb it even,
Right.
but I'm just saying, you know, if you're concerned, like, what is this, what are we actually constraining you to?
It's the building code.
But-
We're not constraining
But to
them
give
in
a
any-
sense,
Yeah, you have
to
to
give
give
them a
a-
sense of what
Well,
does
it's-
that mean? I mean, I don't know if you know what it means, I don't certainly don't know.
I do, and I will say this, that it's achievable fairly easily. I don't know what you're doing, you're gonna probably have a loft-style
Yes.
interior, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You probably have to put, there are these things called clouds, all the architects use, and they kind of hang from the ceiling, and they look like Brillo pads, but they're architectural, so they look cool. And that generally will
Absorbs
give you,
the sound,
it'll
yeah.
probably even beat the 50 that you're looking for.
Okay.
So, I mean, but there's just, or you can drop a ceiling or put drywall on the ceiling with some channels that will help insulate it. And it's not a big deal. I mean, it will be part of the build-out, and certainly if we adopt this code, you'd be required to adhere to those standards anyway. 50 is not horrible. And if they were talking 65, you'd probably want to think twice about it.
So I think from the village standpoint, though, we don't want to give any numbers out.
No.
I mean,
Well, we don't know.
And in worst case,
Our
the
existing
sound
code
consultant's
has
taking
nothing,
help
right,
with
Brian?
that.
Can I make a suggestion? So, because we just dealt with this on the,
I should have credited 2009.
we just dealt with this on the arcade front.
Are we on IBC for 2009?
2009.
What are we doing?
So, on the arcade
It's
front,
It's
we have a standard. An amusement arcade must provide sufficient security measures, that's a little weird, but to effectively regulate disturbing noise and light, loud, blah, blah, blah. It's the effectively and the disturbing that I think is sort of relevant. It's going to be subjective based on the neighborhood and all of that stuff, but I think if we had a general standard that says whatever is happening inside there can't, you need effective measures to avoid disturbing your neighbors. I think it's something you could live with because it's what you do. I can't imagine you're getting sued by your neighbors wherever else you are, right?
And, I mean, the neighbors are across the street, I believe, to
Right.
the right, I think to the left, they're not on the same block, on the same building there, because they're all commercial, and there's nothing behind also.
Yeah, this
Which,
particular one above Walgreens, there is people living up there to the north.
So what I'm hearing is there's a concern about noise,
Right.
and,
Not so much to the street,
but to
to
the
the neighbor,
resident.
business
Okay.
next door is trying to.
And that, also what I'm hearing is that you want to allow this use by right,
Yeah.
and that there may be additional performance standards that will add as a condition. You can have this used by right if no sound will be emitted above a certain decibel level, or some more general language that trustee Kreitz.
I prefer entrusting the professionals to deal with the businesses as opposed to putting it in front of this goat rodeo. Just because, we could spin around all day long and we don't even know what we're talking about. So I think if we have a general standard that says that you will implement sufficient measures to effectively prevent disturbing noise and light, loud conversation, whatever, just like what we have with the arcades, but make it applicable to restaurants or restaurants with catering and banquet facility establishments. That's it. And then I trust you guys because that's what you do. Just like when you build a building, you don't come to us and say, is this foundation? I mean, he would have input and he would have input and the rest of us would sit here like, I don't know.
Yeah, I want to make sure it's just thought out ahead of time, because I hate to have them
Right.
do all the work, open
Right.
up,
Right.
and first day the guy complains,
right.
and you got to turn your wedding off.
Right,
That would not be good.
right. But that's, that's,
but
They're gonna try and
there's
achieve a conversation.
there's no tenants up there.
No, but
Okay.
the wall next door, there's tenants above the wall.
Oh, there is?
it's not a wall,
Okay.
there's a gap.
Okay.
Well, there's a masonry firewall between this
Right.
building and the next one, so there is some of that.
And maybe it's easy as a sound consultant, very economical, get it done.
And it sounds like if the International Building Code has this 50.
It's very, the nice thing about it is it's completely objective. You got a machine that makes a noise, you go in the other space, they measure it, and you either comply or you don't comply. There isn't any thought required to it, so.
Well, as I read this section further, just for clarification, it deals with interior walls and partitions. So not between buildings, but within a building.
Right.
Take a look in your.
And trustee-
see if there's any performance
No, that's a
standards
good
for
point.
noise.
Yeah,
That is.
yeah. So,
And I just want to make a correction, or make sure I'm clear. You said in terms of what we're interested in permitting by right. Within the C2 overlay, I personally would not want just a flat-out banquet facility, but a restaurant with a banquet facility. So it has a portion that's open to anybody at any time.
okay.
And,
Either specialty food or restaurant.
yeah, right.
Attached to the banquet.
Right, so that, whereas if it's only a banquet facility where you're permitted by invitation, that I would think would have to be a special use.
Yeah.
Right.
You got your head around that, David?
Does that
Yeah, no, that makes sense
Okay,
in
great.
terms of,
I mean, big picture,
within the C2 overlay?
yeah.
so you want us to pursue allowing it by right with some performance conditions We'll work with the police department on the liquor license amendments, and then we'll work also with the police department and Public Works on the valet operation standards that we would find acceptable.
And because I hear from all the trustees, and I too feel that we would like to facilitate this use to the best of our ability. So, we'd like to see this back sooner rather than later.
Sure.
Especially if you guys want to open in July, that's going to be a tough road anyway, but.
Right.
It's a tough road. The lease, a developer bought the building and we didn't renew the lease, and they're going to tear it down and build. This is,
Where we're currently at.
yeah.
Oh, really?
So, it's the West Fulton market, which every developer.
Oh, everything's coming down there.
Yeah.
And everything's going up there too, right?
Everything's going up and they're going high.
Yeah. It was actually the first place on my list, wasn't it?
Yes.
I said, yeah.
So do you live in the city? Or do you...
I do. I live in the West Loop, but I've been in business for 11 years next month with my catering business. And from the very beginning, we've always had a strong suburban and particularly North Shore clientele in addition to our city clientele. So I feel like it just kind of makes sense for us. What we do really resonates with North Shore clientele for whatever reason.
It's an easy commute from the West Loop, too.
Good, because I'll have to do it every day.
I do the opposite commute every day.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
Okay.
okay, anything
Let's
else,
bring up
David?
the catering.
I have a couple points.
Sure.
The liquor license, the catering license, has to be on-site and off-site. And by off-site, she caters events, a corporate event, they open up a store. She's done this before for Prada, Gucci, Louis Vuitton. And then they have their grand opening, and they have their food, their finger food, plus they have wine and beer in there. So she must be able to sell it within that. So
Off-site
that's why it's
as well.
off-site and on-site. So
Right, to transport.
We did. We just did.
We just did it.
Okay.
Wine, wasn't that the wine?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a category.
The banquet hall, there's never any liquor sold there. The liquor is sold on prepaid packages.
Right.
So the only liquor that's going to be sold, and there's no takeout on liquor, is just going to be on the restaurant part, just wine and beer. That's it. The valet, I would think that the valet will help other businesses that may want. I mean, you have a business here with 160
Seats, yeah.
capacity, one with 120, and sometimes they may want valet service. It's easier, it alleviates
Yeah.
parking.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. This is great.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up. This is a great idea.
It's only 20 cars. You put it in the village there, and you license the sample one. You license a valet company for a year, and it's easy for them to come in, set up. You know them. They got everything in already. They got the
So
insurance.
they can serve other restaurants.
And they can serve other restaurants. Sure.
I mean, the one question I would have on valet is, do we need a restriction so that the cars cannot be parked in residential neighborhoods? Right?
Well, it
I
has
mean,
to
I
have
think
a
we're going to
specific-
start getting complaints if,
It's
so
gotta
it has
be
to
lots.
stay in the
Yeah.
commercial
Right.
district.
Most of the valet regulations and ordinances I've seen, as part of the license that's given, will designate or specify where the cars will be parked.
Yeah, right, I think that would be
A
really.
specific spot or,
Yeah.
okay, as opposed, because I think,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
What I can see is that.
I'm thinking anywhere in the
Well, I mean,
commercial area.
And in the city, it's different, because
Yeah.
what I can see is that a lazy valet would just start consuming spaces over by Minos, or start consuming spaces by the ice cream store, and the next thing you know, we've got two other angry businesses, because the spaces that are normally,
Right.
they're not reserved for their customers, but that their customers are habituated. to
Yeah,
it.
right, right.
So-
And likewise, the drop-off and pickup area, ideally, is like within your property lines of your building.
That's correct.
Which is, makes sense.
That's what we wrote
You're not
up.
taking away other spaces
This
right
is
there.
why we're not requesting something just in front of the building. There's enough for two cars. They pull in, they take out, there's a couple of valet guys. The second one goes, they put the car back, and then
And there's gonna be times when it backs up on the road. I think you live with that.
Well, I mean, we do need to think about that because that is Green Bay thoroughfare. I mean, as long as it's not a rush hour, I don't think it's be a big deal, but, if you have any
Weddings
events.
are usually after 6, 7 o'clock.
Well, they're usually from 6, we sell a 6-hour package on the venue, so it's typically a 6 to midnight or a 5 to 5:30,
And it
11:30.
just happens and you pass, and no different than someone waiting for a parking stall to back in.
And typically, the valet license will run with the specific use. It won't be a license to operate everywhere.
Okay.
Because a valet license will look different for your operation versus, say, one in West Elm. So you have different restrictions and requirements for parking in an area here versus up north.
But that's left to the discretion of David
The
or
licensee
Steve or,
Mark.
right, or Mark,
But-
that somebody would figure out.
But,
Yeah, exactly.
but to be honest, I mean, I am serious that if you do have an event at Friday night at rush hour,
Right.
we may need to look at allocating extra space because, that area is really congested. And if you have a car or two backed up waiting in traffic on Green Bay Road, it's gonna really create a bottleneck. So, I mean, it's just something to think about in terms of how we go about doing it. Yeah, right. I mean, most of the time, it won't be a problem in the evening, but just there is that Friday rush hour, which is.
Right.
Probably no worse than the people trying to turn left, heading southbound into the Walgreens parking lot at the same time, and seeing traffic backed up all the way to the old Walgreens.
Well, I guess it just depends on how many valet parkers you have. I mean, I don't know that much about how a valet, process works, but.
Yeah, right, I
yeah.
think you have more early in the night when people are arriving.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it, but because at the end of the evening.
Yeah, that won't be a big deal. No, it's that 5 o'clock rush hour on a Friday evening. That's really the only potential
There's
problem.
typically at least 4 of them out front that I've seen whenever we
No.
have them at our
They're,
venue.
they're pretty efficient. On efficiency, you get the car, 2 guys.
They hustle
doing-
back and forth, yeah.
Yeah, we
Um,
always work with VIP Valet. That's just who we use for all of our events.
Just trying to think.
So it's something that we can work on. once
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
doing
no
it.
big deal. As I said, that's just sort of thinking, the only potential bottleneck.
What else you got there in your notes?
No, just that, the time frames already. So, anything that could be a permitted use would just speed up the process.
I agree.
And if you have any questions or whatever, she's available anytime. Any type of information that you may need, we're available to give it to you.
Great.
So they don't need a specific license for just serving alcohol has been
That's up to
pre-purchased?
Mark and-
Okay, that's a different, yeah. I mean, we have a category for that, right? Yeah.
Do you have a lease? I mean, are you guys solid on the building now?
Well,
We're
so
neg- It's, right.
we can't sign the lease unless we get the
know that,
okay, so, the owner has been vacant for a while, and it's hard to lease a 10,000 square foot space because a
Yeah.
storefront will want 2,000, maybe 2,500, but, who wants to lease 10,000 to put a storefront in there?
I'm currently in 8,000, and we could use the additional space very easily. So 10,000 is really ideal for me.
Your lease is contingent on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we won't sign anything, we'll have to keep our options open, we won't until this, it makes no sense to sign, put the deposit down, and then we don't get it, and then here we are again.
So he doesn't have a contingency.
Well, I don't want it to be said that the village stood in your way, so we'll do everything we can to facilitate an appropriate move forward for you. And boy, again, I think it's a pretty aggressive schedule with the commercial kitchen, but I guess you guys will figure that out on the
The
fly.
commercial kitchen is actually the least of our concerns.
That's the easiest part for me.
Catering kitchen, right?
Yeah, but we've built 2 of them already. We
We
can do
built
that
2 of them
quickly.
already.
Yeah, and we've built a
You've
venue
been through the
already.
brain surgery.
Yeah, if anything,
Yeah.
I think it's more like the design and concept of the front space.
Oh.
Because it's client facing and it needs to be perfect. We have a very specific aesthetic and style, so.
Cool, well, we're looking forward to it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
then I don't know how long the permitting process, so that's another thing that I have to educate myself on.
We can't help you with that.
I know that. As I said, I have to go find out, how long it's gonna take, and so,
Well, and also getting your drawings all done.
yeah, get the drawings, get the
You haven't
architect.
started yet, and
Sure.
We do outsource our review, so it is pretty dependable and predictable from that standpoint, as long as it's right the first time through, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good
Thank you
luck.
for your
Looking forward
consideration.
to having
Thank
it here.
Thank you.
We'll see you hopefully very shortly.
Hopefully.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah, I haven't looked looked at it online.
Yeah.
Yippee.
So Louise, what do you think? Within the C2 overlay?
Well, the community house used to have bands in the arches.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah.
And with the townhouses,
Oh,
chief to jowl
that
to
didn't
the
work.
noise. And the way they solved it was by taking a very nice letter to those homeowners and saying on such and such a date, there will be an outdoor wedding, an outdoor party going on till 11:30. And please join us earlier for a nice cocktail.
Come on to our wedding. Yeah.
Bribe them with food, it works every time.
Yeah.
Leave now so you can talk about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. All right, next item, C2 Commercial Overlay District. And all I can say is that when you stop hitting me over the head with a hammer, it's going to feel really good, because this is now our sixth time talking about this. Not that it doesn't deserve it, but this is a subject that's getting very long in the tooth. This is a continuation of an ongoing discussion about the Commercial Overlay District. Tonight, the council will hear some recommendations for amending the overlay's boundaries. And David's here to review. So,
Yes. So this evening, just briefly talk about your last study session, and then talk about what we've included in your packet in terms of potentially adjusting boundaries, the land use table, and the special use standards. So at the last meeting, you talked about a capped use approach. We discussed the pros and cons of such approach, and in the end, the council concluded that he wanted to pursue another approach. And so when we left the meeting, we talked about, again, basically looking at the boundaries and the uses allowed. We briefly hinted at a concept of creating a third zoning district, and after studying that further, concluded that it would provide little benefit and may cause more problems for existing property owners who, in essence, would be downzoned, meaning fewer uses would be allowed on their properties. So what we have done is have taken some time to identify potential areas, boundary areas that could be removed from the overlay district. And I want to say, as we talk, so what that means is, all the uses we want would still be allowed in those areas. It just means other uses would be allowed by right. So it's not like we're taking, they no longer could be used for retail or restaurants, but other uses could be allowed there by right. And so we've identified in each district some areas. Some of these ideas came from commission members, planned commission members. Some have come from property owners, such as the Savoci Glass Building, that have expressed an interest in having an office use go there, and could it be removed from the overlay district. And that was a while ago, and their plans for that site may change. So the idea is to identify where those areas could be. And I can go over each of these to discuss them with you, the pros and cons, if that's what you'd like. Or I can leave it at this point and just say we started to identify areas. The other thing to think about as we're doing this in consideration is, as we're changing some land use categories, in terms of, for instance, beauty salons would now be a special use. Currently, they're a permitted use. The area on Chestnut Court, those that are off of Chestnut Street, that, we already have a couple of beauty salons, spas there. So if we took those out of the overlay district, in that area, those uses would be allowed by right. I'll just go through this quickly. So on the north end is the Grand Foods parking lot. Again, until that site's ready to redevelop, that designation, whether we change it or not, does it give us any benefit right now? No, because there's no building there for people to lease. So that was identified in the past in terms of a long-range idea, should that site ever redevelop, that we wouldn't want retail along the street. Across the street would be part of the Laundry Mall building, basically west of Starbucks, and then the Savoci Glass building would be removed from the district. As we go further south on the West Elm District, we have the two banks at the corner of Green Bay Road and Elm. Again, they're currently banking facilities. We don't have any anticipation of those changing soon. You do hear about concepts of banks repurposing space. I see a lot of ads for a particular bank that now has their cafes in them. But anyway, in terms of banking, if they would ever change the use of their space and open up some of it for other uses. And then I've already talked about the Chestnut Court area. And then on the east side, we've identified the One Winnetka site and those areas along Lincoln Avenue. Again, more because it's not going to have that traditional retail street feel with the train tracks across the street. So we were thinking that, well, maybe that would be an area that other uses could be allowed by right. Again, a retail or a restaurant could go in that space. That may be another area where the council may decide to reduce the boundaries.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Is there a theory behind this that supports the idea that we can collapse the retail areas that will have more foot traffic among the stores that are there and then concentrate and have fewer special use permits and exceptions in the area that is not changed as we do this? Is there a theory that supports that, or?
I mean, that's the idea, is that you try to create these corridors where it has a strong retail feel to it, and then maybe on the edge, you could allow these other uses by right. Now, until you prohibit a physical fitness facility or a medical use in the overlay district, someone still has the right to ask. It's presumed to be an allowed use. As long as they can demonstrate to the council's satisfaction it meets the standards, then it's an allowed use. But as we talk about this and reducing the boundaries, we need to think about, well, how much space are we really creating for these other uses to go to? You know, what are we really benefiting? You know, so the Grand Foods lot, that doesn't gain us anything right now. We take the two banks out. Unless someone's heard something differently, I don't see them going anywhere anytime soon. You know, maybe on Chestnut, because we've identified that beauty salons and spas should be special uses. Well, we have a couple of them there right now, so we take them out, then they're allowed by right there. And then the One Winnetka site, again, it's not that traditional retail street feel with retail on both sides.
What was contemplated there by One Winnetka?
The rendering had a restaurant.
There was a restaurant?
On the south side.
So they're 50 feet south of Elm Street, what were they?
They can't put a restaurant next to 7-Eleven.
Right.
That's what the deal was.
I think that's the only
I
restriction.
think their entrance, they have an entrance into the building, and then north of that entrance was a restaurant, and south of it,
They're thinking shops.
They were prohibited from putting something right next to the drive of a food service.
But they had shops.
Correct.
Yeah, it was shops.
They had
exactly.
shops that would be overlay acceptable shops.
and the restaurant.
Right, but there just couldn't be a restaurant because of the
Chris,
smell.
do you want comments now?
I don't
or
know, I
what-
mean, this kind of caught me by surprise, to be honest with you, because I hadn't seen this sort of
Because from my point of view, I'm okay with it, except for the banks. And I take the point that the banks aren't going to go away anytime soon, but we're not we're not saying, well, this is the overlay for the next 5 years. We're saying this is the overlay until the council would take it up again. And, you know, I do think financial industry is changing fast.
They could leave.
They could leave.
Right.
They
And they'd be
could
great
want, you
retail
know,
spots.
and my concern is that we don't want to increase the gap of
Right.
retail between the east
Right.
and west side. We want to try and close that gap. And if we turn those banks into something that's not retail, then we've increased the gap. So.
I mean, I would think that those potentially would be tremendous retail places. And again, as long as it remains the bank as it is, I mean, it's grandfathered, but if the building was to go down or whatever, I would think we would want to encourage retail use there. As
You
well
know-
as, I'm sorry,
I was just going to say, David, why don't we take these, like, one piece at a time?
One
Because
property at a time?
Instead of you
One
flowing
map.
through your whole presentation,
One map at a time.
let's
Oh,
just kind of
Sure,
chop
no,
this thing up
I'd
and-
be happy to do that.
It sounds like we've got a desire to talk about this anyway, so we might as well get it out while everybody's thinking about it.
So I'm hearing when Scott was talking to leave these two in the overlay district, and I seen head nods, so we're going to leave those in unless someone objects?
can I back up just ask a more fundamental question? And this is perhaps ridiculous, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. That our special use process, part of the reason why it's so onerous is that you have to submit all of your architectural drawings and I mean, the process itself is expensive, right? Because of everything that you have to produce for the village to go through it,
It
correct?
depends upon the use. I mean, if it's a simple use, mathnasium, they didn't have to submit architectural detailed plans. It was mainly evaluating, because they were basically reusing the space as is. So it was minimal. We didn't require them to submit a traffic study. There is the fee associated with a special use permit, but we've allowed them to go through the process, and then later, if they're going to make facade changes, then they have to come back before the design review board for those facade changes. If they're going to make significant changes, Figueroa, we wanted some idea. I know the Plan Commission wanted some idea about the floor layout in terms of, what's going to be the activity at the street level. So they had to invest some, but they're also looking to occupy the space, so they had to figure out how they were going to make the space work for their use.
Because, to me, part of the balance that we're trying to accomplish is to encourage the use of spaces that aren't being rented out by retail. And so the question is, what are the hurdles? What are the obstacles for a potential business? What do they have to overcome to locate in the C2 overlay? And part of the issue is the expense and to go through the special use process.
The time.
Yeah, and the time.
So
right.
I think some of you may remember that one of the earlier attempts to look at this was
Right.
to streamline the
Yes,
process
right,
and not
right,
have
right.
the zoning board
Right.
involved, so we go Plan Commission directly to council.
Right.
And that, I think, if I remember correctly, ones here that was around when we dealt with it, but I think it shaved about 6 weeks off the
Of it,
process.
right.
It's
4 to
still
6
90 to
weeks.
120 days.
And there's no way around that. I guess because the question is if, we can, if it's possible to make that easier to front load, like with this tonight, where they sat down and discussed it, rather than going through and having to make all their final drawings to submit. Because I don't know how much do we want to shrink our retail districts. So that's what I'm asking in terms of the balance between what's the cost and expense to the business owner in terms of going through the request process to be approved, as well as staff time, versus keeping control of our retail districts and not just letting them go.
But
I think
isn't there another element, though, just to, like the Savoci glass building, I guess you said, might be turned into offices?
At one point, they had an interest in
So,
doing that.
I mean, I've heard from Winnetkins who want an office in Winnetka, and they say that they can't do that. And they see that that's kind of stupid because all the people that would be officing with them would go and have lunch in the town center and like, you know, be foot traffic, and it doesn't make sense. So Savoci, where it's located.
Right.
You know, it's not like a big ad in terms of the retail intensity. So is there a signal that we're giving by unoverlaying areas and saying, we know that this isn't vital to the retail intensity, so therefore we're welcoming you in to think about having an office here, just to be like, we're open for business.
And I wouldn't disagree with you with that particular parcel, but just the massive shrink that we're looking at. I'm just wondering if we can accomplish both of our goals. And I agree. I mean, I think we definitely need to take a look and make sure that the districts that we currently have allocated are appropriate or not.
And I just want to clarify, we're identifying areas that we think that you could consider it.
Yeah, right.
You know, and as we went through this, and as I said, you know, some of it, what do we benefit by removing it or not? You know, so this was to help, more to be an exercise of to think, okay, if you want to reduce the boundaries, what are things to think about as you if you want to. If you don't, then you don't need to.
So the question I have, maybe for Brian or you, in the past X amount of years, for someone who's come before the boards to get a variance or a different use in the C2 overlay, when have we ever said no?
That's Scott's point.
Well,
I'm not trying,
No.
Our number 7
Right.
meeting, it's like, just beating their heads on the wall.
Well,
But there's those that you don't ever see. So it may not be necessarily the cost point, but the time and uncertainty point.
and also,
That
as-
we can't, you know, now with, you know, recently the Plan Commission recommended against a physical therapist on Chestnut. You know, so now staff's perspective is, okay, if you're a physical therapy use, a medical use, wanting to go in a certain part of the community, I'm telling you, this is what happened the last time one went through. So there is a level of uncertainty that if you want to be in, we can tell them, and if that's the direction the council wants to go, if you want to be in the heart, what we're hearing is the heart of our commercial district, this is how the Plan Commission has responded in the past.
Because even if you leave for us with the banquet hall, you know, what real good is 6 p.m. to midnight on Friday and Saturdays helping the downtown area? But yet it's crazy allowed. I mean, I don't see the whole purpose for spot zoning areas of downtown and limiting building owners to what they want.
well, but part of,
Or what they can lease. The building's vacant 6 years.
but
You know?
part of the situation, I mean, we need to take the long view, and right now, we're struggling. I mean, as the nature of our commercial districts is changing. I mean, we're in a change mode, and hopefully, we'll be able to adapt and figure out how we want, I mean, hopefully, our commercial districts will adapt and we'll get some more vigor back into it. So the question is, over time, over the long view, do we want to relinquish, you know, just have open zoning or not? So
Agreed.
not necessarily just over, yeah, well, no, but that's a good question.
Yeah.
But not just over our current period of difficulty, but over the long period.
But I mean, when you compare it to Wilmette, which I find, you know, inferior in every way in terms of its aesthetics,
Except the
right?
people.
Except the people, right, but the point is, they have so much vigor in their downtown, and they also allow for officing in their downtown, and therefore there is foot traffic during the day, those facilities get used, they sell sandwiches at their restaurants all day long, and because people are officing there, and here, we don't let people do that, we don't, you know, so if there are non-core areas where we could tell people and telegraph to people that, hey, we do want you to set up your office in downtown Winnetka, and we do think that's an appropriate use. I think that's why this exercise is valuable, is to say to people, like, you know, hey, like the one Winnetka development, maybe there is an opportunity for some Winnetkins to have an office go in there. And, you know, I don't necessarily think that would be detrimental, you know, to the retail scene. In fact, it could be supportive of it. So.
I mean, I think, so, right, we've had a lot of meetings. I think maybe not everyone's in agreement, but we've talked about in the previous meetings is having having retail here that enhances the efficiency of people's lives in the community is something that we want to encourage, and that clustering retail not only makes it more efficient for the shopper, but also more productive for the businesses. And I think that, so the question is, well, what is that core? From my perspective, other than keeping the banks, I think what is proposed on the changes in Elm Street, I would view as kind of non-core. I mean, Chestnut Court is pretty, but it's kind of off the beaten path. I think that Spruce Street, you know, here again, it's kind of off the beaten path. I think when you look at Green Bay Road, I mean, the extensions on Tower Road, I think make, you know, eminent sense to remove those from the overlay. You know, I guess I would like to keep Green Bay Road north of Merrill at this point. I think that the extensions on Gage probably are non-core. And that gives us some changes, and that, along with some of the proposed changes in what's permitted and what's special use, begins to move us in providing more flexibility, recognizing the changing shopping needs of people and use needs of people, but yet not going all the way and saying, oh, we're going to eliminate the overlay and just allow anybody to do anything.
Right, and retailers have said to me, you know, we want the overlay. They want to have a critical mass. And I also think we have major holes in what our retail offerings are. And I don't know why the landlords in the village haven't, you know, gone after men's apparel and sporting goods again, and really tried to recruit those kinds of businesses to Winnetka, because I think it's easy to see that there's, you know, even more space to grow in terms of retail offerings. So I don't think we're dead and, you know, like, look at Armitage downtown. It's become this men's apparel road street. So I just think that there's more work that we can do, and maybe part of, you know, shrinking the overlay is to say at the same time we want to redouble our efforts to deal with the efficient shopping and, you know, interesting shopping needs of residents.
And maybe I'm missing a boat. How is, you know, great, retail's awesome if you can get it, but by allowing restaurants in that district, doesn't that?
Restaurants are allowed.
It is.
No, but I think
doesn't that
yeah,
kill
John's point is
the
going to be.
retail? Because, yeah, we could put 2 restaurants on Chestnut that, for one, kill the parking for the retailers. Typically, the restaurants are the heavy parking users.
Yeah,
So how is that helping the retail?
What I
I
think
don't know,
about,
is that,
when we actually go to retail establishments, oftentimes we go down to Evanston, we go out to dinner, and then we hit like Borders or one of the record stores, or, you know, we go to Smiley Brothers, and then we go shopping. I mean,
what are
that's,
Smiley
Well, no
Brothers?
different than your physical therapist or yoga studio. I mean,
Oh.
It's
I
owned
should
by
have
residents of
guessed.
Winnetka.
I should have guessed.
So
I should have guessed.
if everyone wants to keep the overlay, maybe there's a quick way to say, okay, the overlay special use process
Right.
is a different meeting. Like, it's a one-shop stop.
Maybe that's it, yeah. I mean,
Maybe
that's what I was trying to
and
get at.
ideally-
They
right.
all end up in village council's lap.
Well, can we do it in such a way that it's up to the zoning board as a one-stop shop, or is that a legal way?
The first community I worked in, all special uses went to our zoning board of appeals.
And that was it?
That was it.
And I go to a lot of cities where some special uses and stuff show up on the council as consent. If you want to pull it off, if there's a problem, pull it off. Just expedite that process and trust your lower board.
You don't know how hard it was to get a consent agenda in this village to begin with.
Well, I mean,
I'm just-
I think,
See, like, if we hardly ever, as far as I know, we've not said no in a while.
well, right, but we've had a lot of vacant space. It hasn't
Well-
always been like
But
that.
I
see, you
think,
can't-
but I think,
you
I
can't
mean,
do it now or
David's point is
tomorrow.
that I think, you know, people come and talk to them and
Right.
then decide not to pursue.
No, yeah, they weren't able
Right,
to have.
right.
Maybe it's something that we would do,
Um,
you know?
But they see that.
So maybe an easier process, so you don't have to change any of this then, unless you want to change a few uses, but.
Here, I don't have a good sense, and as a complement to this, and this is not to be in place of this conversation, but, you know, your point about office space and people wanting to look at offices is a really good point. I don't have any idea what our office inventory is and whether there are spaces that we should be encouraging offices to locate. you know, you're right, it's a complementary conversation. I don't have a sense of that balance in terms of what our inventory is.
So,
I only have one statement on this whole thing, on this,
mhm.
is I would be hard pressed to provide any relief for one Winnetka until we see what the market brings us.
Okay.
Taking it out before the thing is even built makes no sense to me.
It was advertised as retail.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing not to take the one Winnetka parcel out.
No way.
So we're gonna,
I'm officially abstaining on anything involving that property.
so we'll leave that in. I heard
Taking the easy
Scott.
way out a lot all of a sudden.
I heard Scott and Ann talk about the south side of Spruce in terms of taking it out.
But why would you take out the laundry? I
Well,
could
Well,
see
I don't think
Savochi
you are,
Glass.
you're not,
Well, he is, he's got Valentina and,
That is the one.
Yeah, I don't
since I'm
think,
a
because
frequent
those
shopper
have
of
been,
Valentina, I would hate to see it have any reason to go away. But,
The glass building.
the Savochi
yeah,
Glass,
Savachi,
that kind of a
yeah,
development,
that's
that
kind
feels
of,
like that should be made
I
into
thought that
office.
was-
didn't we already talk about that?
It's
We already talked about that.
ideal office space.
yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
So-
didn't we
It
approve
could
it?
also be a cool restaurant.
Yeah, right, okay. I thought we already approved it.
So just the Savochi Glass building.
Yes.
I mean, it's gonna
Making
end
a
up
lot
being
of
so
progress.
trendy.
Hey, we are.
So why are we going to waste all this time for one building, I
Well,
guess?
Chestnut,
And Chestnut Court.
ain't even gotten up to it yet.
And Hubbard Woods, all of Hubbard Woods. Kidding.
And the brand.
Yeah.
No, actually, now there was an interesting question, is that the Grand Foods parking lot frontage, that would be, the reason why it's there is if there was anything to go up there, right? That it would be retail?
Well, there is stuff there.
No, if on the corner.
If they,
If they ever
were to
got rid of
build
the
it.
parking lot.
If
and
they were
wanted
to
put
build
something
it.
up.
I mean, I know right now it's
So
just
if
parking
they
lot.
went to
think
the
it's
PUD,
fine.
the underlying zoning would still allow them to do whatever they want. They could build an office there.
Without the overlay district,
Right.
correct.
But I would, I mean,
I just think that that's really getting out of the core area to say, we're gonna put that in the retail overlay. There's really nothing opposite, well, other than the laundry.
well,
You're kind
the
of out in the middle
laundry,
of
the
nowhere.
laundry is significant.
Yeah, but
It
to
is
say
good
you're
to
gonna,
have an office next to it.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
guarantee what's
That's-
gonna happen, as soon as we make any of these changes,
right.
we're gonna have a special use for one of the buildings we didn't change.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, you will.
I mean, we
You
will, we will.
So we
And-
just look at the process.
Yeah, the
Well, the
special use
process is the
should be
important
better.
part. The process is important in terms of how we can make it as easy as possible.
With the process refinements we made last
Why don't you
time.
just
Yeah.
come up and
Was that enough?
That was actually, what I recall, the applicants viewed that as.
I'll tell you to be quiet if you get out of hand. Louise is going to join us.
She's got a plan.
She's going to
Good.
dog in the fight.
Was inclusive. So now it's a matter of, do you like that process, or do you want to keep it one or the other? I mean, that's really, you pared down 1/3 of it more, so now you've got the two pieces.
Understand, Louise, though, we've had a lot of conversations about changing it, so you have to come with the understanding
Right,
that that we're not going to be talking about not doing nothing.
right.
And I'm trying to be respectful, but the general movement has been, we have to do something. To be honest with you, this conversation is completely catching me off guard, because even though I read it I just didn't expect to talk about boundaries. I thought we had really focused on this whole use change thing. And that the boundary thing seemed like kind of a lost cause, and it didn't, Andy, I mean, you had a lot to say on this,
From the Savochi
but...
building, yeah, I'm feeling like we were starting to get consensus around some changes on the
uses, right?
But I appreciate you guys exploring this, because the concept of, can we focus things, and I've long been in favor of doing whatever we can on this, because I feel like we have too many vacant spaces. My concern is, we start taking out a lot of things, not really knowing what might happen there. It's just sort of, it's a little inconsistent, and I'm not sure it does anything.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure, for example.
well, taking the grand out doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do
It's like-
anything, so it doesn't excite me, it doesn't upset me.
Right.
It's
but I
gonna be a
just-
PD development if it ever goes to
Right,
anything.
and the
Those that
banks,
carve off just-
so the Savochi building, I do think is sort of off, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure my fear with a property like that is it just because it's a standalone thing with limited uses, it just might die there, which would be bad.
It is, because the guy's not maintaining it very well, and I'm getting more frustrated.
I think that makes sense.
That makes sense, I think. So, but other than that, I mean, there's nothing on at least the Elm Street, the what we call downtown, that really excites me as far as removing, other than Savochi. On Hubbard Woods, I don't have any strong feelings on taking things out there either. I think where we get more bang for our buck on Hubbard Woods is going to be expanding the uses that are more appropriate for that area. Like we just did.
Which we just did.
I mean, like, that's a perfect example.
Right.
And I really like what you guys did. I don't know if there's a process, but, you know, you had an applicant with an interest in something that's not in the code. You got it before us so we can act on it quickly. Because I've long felt, you know, we've got this enumerated list, and there's all kinds of stuff we don't know.
Right.
And this was just crystallized that, because we had that whole conversation. What else do you know? And we just think of them.
Maker spaces, brew pubs, and what's going to be the next goal.
Right.
Yeah. And now, and we did get the, what do they call it, workspace in there too, or whatever they call it.
Shared workspaces? What?
Like a WeWork type thing?
Yeah.
What's WeWork?
Well, they're going to,
Shared
they're
office
going to
space.
tank, but somebody else will come up behind them.
Yeah.
But that's something that is pretty compelling, and actually, I'm trying to lease space to a group like that right now.
Yeah, I totally.
And I do like those spaces, and what I don't know, maybe the answer is, and it's sort of what you're saying with the expedited process, keep doing what you just did.
Yeah.
Be opportunistic when things appear, and if you can get it in front of us, and it seems consistent with the intent of the code, then it gives us a chance to adjust it.
But I'd like to see the process that doesn't come to us.
Right, but I'm just saying, you know, we can't, we're really bad at predicting the future.
If we were,
So maybe we just react to the present a lot faster.
Well, can I make a suggestion that?
Sure.
So we've talked about Elm Street, right? So taking Savochi out, taking Chestnut Court out. In Hubbard Woods, Tower, I would suggest we take Tower out. And I'm fine taking Gage, west of Green Bay Road out. And then now let's just focus on the uses,
Yeah.
right? Because other than anything other than that,
North Green Bay Road out, up by Scott, is that in there?
yeah, I would leave that in.
Leave that in
I
there?
would leave that in
As long
there
as
for
we have
now.
the
and Let's
lease there.
focus on the uses.
What are you
Yeah.
thinking about Chestnut Court? I mean, that's the one that. I'm just kind of-
Chestnut Court is, it's quiet, but there is a design shop there. When Gary Frank came to the Plan Commission for his architect store offices, he claimed that there was no retail around him. And the owner of Good Grapes stood up and said, "Hello, I'm right next door to you." And across the street is the post office site, which someday will be developed into retail. Anyway, he promised his windows would be enticing, they would be fabulous. I sit on the Plan Commission, and one of the biggest problems, and I'm sorry to have to, is this being recorded?
It's on TV too.
Yeah.
What-
And we're
oh.
gonna
There's like
mail-
4 or
we're gonna
5
mail a link
links.
to everybody on the plane.
Well, the votes are always 7-1, so it shouldn't. One of the biggest problems we have, or I perceive, is that people do not tell the truth when they come before the Plan Commission. You're smiling, Peter. And they're sworn in. I swear to tell the whole truth. And they come before the Plan Commission, and where Figuerosa was going in, the landlord said, "This has been vacant for 4 years." I said, "Excuse me, 4 years? J.C. Licht moved 6 months ago." So, that kind of thing. Gary Frank he's going to have the best windows, that it's going to entice
It sits
people.
right there in the window, so there's your enticing window. You walk by and wave to them all the time.
The one that you found, Chris, the pop-up store for, one thing I want to know is in the uses, I was around in '87 when the overlay district was created. And it was created because of the real estate office, which went in at the corner of Elm and Chestnut. And that was a Carson Perry Scott retail store. It absolutely, the real estate offices were anxious to get into Winnetka. We're geographically perfect. We're between Evanston and Lake Forest. And they could put their offices here and spread. When Caldwell Banker asked for that 1,600 feet on Lincoln Avenue, the chairman or the person running the office said, we asked, how many new people will this bring? She said 0 or 1. 2 weeks later, I had lunch with a friend in Wilmette, who is a realtor with Caldwell Banker, and she said, we can do this very often because we're moving to Winnetka. And I said, what do you mean you're moving to Winnetka? She said, well, 8 of us are coming to the offices on Lincoln Avenue. This was after, I swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And now you can see this pop-up store is a fiction. It's there for a week and a half, and then it's gone. That's the biggest problem the Plan Commission has.
Right. Well, on pop-ups, though, I actually am interested in pop-ups because they're...
One on Elm actually worked for them.
Well, a lot of retail is going to pop-ups for not a week and a half, but for 3 months, a period of time. And that is a trend in retail, and people in retail do it to test the market, to see if it's the right location for their outlet, and also for them to access a new market, because a lot of it is online based. In terms of a community, it brings a lot of excitement, right? If you have someone who's a landlord who's actively engaged in bringing pop-ups in, then you'll have interesting different options,
If they bring it in.
If they bring it in. I mean, they have to be focused.
And the issue here was that...
I don't know what this pop-up
Yeah,
over a week and a half was.
It's not the concept,
We
it's
gave,
execution.
we gave the realtor the right to occupy street front space with the proviso that they would have a space in their window for pop-up over at the Galleria, we call a banker. And I stopped and talked to Karen. After 4 phone calls and 3 visits, I finally caught her coming in the door, and I called her out on it. And she's, the whole idea was, well, I've got this string of people interested in doing a pop-up store in our front window, and so I'll do that. And we actually gave them the approval based on that. And so I'm going to actually have David.
That's a different issue, though.
Right, but I'm going to have David come, and Louise, much to your point, we can't legislate people's morality. We have to just take
and
value.
about pop-up stores, I have a friend that wanted to take the Village Carpet space for a month. She would bring in all her people, she would put in a fake or a wall and a door so that she wasn't taking the entire space, but there was another exit for it. And the landlord had already a lease on the space. And the lessee said, no, I don't want anybody in that store at all. So, there was a...
We actually thought that was going in, and
Yeah.
found out it wasn't.
Oh, really? Well, and the person I know that was very anxious to spend a great deal of money on a pop-up store, she's in Libertyville now, with, a 6,400 square foot warehouse type operation. And she would love to have a store and can use something like...
The space on Elm Street worked out really well, I think.
Trustee Wender, I just wanted to respond a little bit to the concept. I think we're pretty well set up for pop-ups. We passed an ordinance that would allow them so that we don't require any change of use, sprinkling restrictions or building code restrictions. They can be in for 90 days upon application, and we actually tried to streamline that because of the I think it was the sweater cashmere shop that went in, and we've had them repeat. So we're set up not to be an administrative barrier. They can get in. It's just a matter of finding those that are interested.
Okay, well, I'll work with a business development person, because I've just recently come across a bunch of retailers who want to do pop-ups here.
Okay, so bringing it back,
We'll talk about that another time.
we have to talk about uses.
So before we go, if I can, if you're going to get any
You
direction.
want to change David?
No, I want direct, if the topic's closed and we don't change anything, that's fine.
Whatever Scott
but-
said.
Whatever Scott.
Again, I'm taking the long view, I'm just going to ask the question. Right now, where Chestnut Court is, it is quiet because the post office is quiet. However, when the time comes for that to be redeveloped, that will be a more active area, so.
It's still in the C2, right? It just wouldn't be in the overlay.
Right.
So we can still control it through permitted uses in what goes there, right? And as we look at the changes that are proposed here, you know, a tanning salon would be a special use still. Now, I'm not sure I like the idea of a taxidermy shop being a permitted use in the C-tail. You know, come on.
Oh, come on.
Come on, I don't want that
Where am I going to get my
taxidermy.
jackalope?
As long as you can just sell, yeah, you can sell that.
But, I mean, I think it's still restricted.
So as we change uses allowed in this overlay, are we alerting the building owners that we're taking away some of their allowed uses prior to doing this? It would upset me if
They've
you
never come
took out a
to,
barber shop and tomorrow I have a barber shop that wants to lease my space.
they have
You
never
mean-
come to any of these conversations.
I'm just-
No, but I mean, I think you're right.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
fine. Yeah,
you're
I
down
think we
zoning
should.
their
Yep.
piece of parcel.
Yep, I think that's, okay, yeah.
Downs, actually, the C2 would be the down zone.
Well, we're
you're taking
taking a
away
barber
uses.
shop from being
The
a permitted
overlay.
use to being a special.
Okay, but we're out of the district.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm with you, Scott, okay.
so.
I'm sort of,
So no decisions on the overlay, the boundaries, we'll leave them as is?
Savoci
I
out.
just do.
I think
Okay, I
there's
got
a lot of
outvoted on
work.
Chestnut Court.
And actually, Chestnut Court, my question is that when that's over,
We'll move on.
does it make
Fine.
more sense to
Leave it in,
or to take
leave it
out?
in, I give up, move it on.
Just
Savoci
Savoci
done.
and Hubbard Woods, everything will stay?
Tower, I would
Okay,
take
so we'll
Tower,
just-
Tower, Gage,
West
west
of
of
Green
Green
Bay.
Bay.
Those would come out.
take those out, and then
Do I see more than two nods on that?
What are we talking about? Gage,
Tower,
West, Green.
Tower, and Gage west of Green Bay.
Don't give up the farm.
There's a,
This
no, there's.
and this.
It's true.
So does that include the Joe Banks?
Yes.
Why would we give that up?
Yeah, I'd say just leave what's Gage is, that's Joseph Banks, and then.
I mean, we're not saying,
I'd hate to see another salon on that corner.
Yeah,
well, but that's the uses.
But if the guy
On the-
leases the space, he'll be thrilled to have it. You building owner. I mean, I'm
But would
obviously
the
not
community be
all
thrilled to
agreement
have
there,
it?
so.
The front part of Joseph A. Bank would still be in the overlay district.
The front part.
The front part, the first 50 feet on Green Bay Road would still be in the overlay district.
What about if you had like a
So
real
50
spa?
feet back on Gage is what you're saying.
From
From Green
Tower
Bay,
going back.
There's
This-
nothing
Oh,
there.
no, we're talking,
The side entrance,
There's a
the
parking
side
lot
entrance to
in the
Banks.
alley.
is where the,
Possibly.
Front door, where the door is actually is. It's
right there, that is still in the overlay district. It's Joseph A. Bank.
Right here. So that part right there.
Well, it's also part of that building.
Yeah, the building.
So if a retailer it probably is going to, unless they divide the space,
crazy
would
to
still
give-
first
to
either
give
be a
this up.
retailer or
Go ahead
a,
and leave it.
it's still the first 50 feet.
You get opening ceremony.
So if they would divide the space for some reason, they could put an office on Gage, or they could leave retail along.
it's up to you guys. I am so frustrated with this subject.
I'm not going to go to the man on Joseph A. Banks. So people want to leave it in, that's fine.
Tower makes sense because it is what it is.
Tower is the gas
Corners,
station.
those Corners, the gas station.
So
and-
we're giving back the gas station that we captured,
And where
what,
the
5 years
shoe
ago?
repair shop is, isn't it, that
Yeah,
little.
but there's girlfriends.
Girlfriends.
Girlfriends,
That-
Friends is the nail place.
which is a special use now in the overlay district.
Here again, it's not that we're
If-
kicking out the stores that are there. It's a question of what's where are we consolidating? Where
two
is the
spaces would be
core
fine
of
for office.
shopping?
Maybe
Right.
office space eventually.
I think where Figueroa is on Gage is also a good area for offices. You know, where the barber shop was, which is now gone, and, whatever that was that goes towards Sacred Heart. Like, those would be good
So
for
that,
offices.
that's directly opposite the, Joseph Banks, right?
Well, I
I'm
mean,
not
Joe
seeing-
Banks is to the east,
Is that
then
no?
if the block keeps going towards the school, you know, I mean, I wish I don't know.
see anything there.
It used to be, you know, the toy store used to be there, Beat Street, but that was a long time ago. And now there's really nothing over there. And there was a woman who had a clothing thing over there, a custom clothing person. She's gone. The barber is gone, right? He's gone. There's nothing happening over there. I mean, I don't think we lose much by saying, oh, someone could have an office there. Like because then they would have more people in the area and they would trickle east and go to OUAB and have a bagel and have some sushi and have ice cream, you know, they would consume inside of the area. Yeah. Once upon a bagel.
Oh! I thought it was like OLPH.
You know, this is one where we approved Figueroa already. I didn't, when we did that, my feeling was it was sort of off the beaten path. And I was worried about who would be willing to invest the money in that building. You know, from a retail perspective, that's where I see the sense in taking things off is where I worry that the building's gonna die because you don't have, it's not that attractive to a retailer that would have the financial ability to keep the building vibrant. You know, that building, we already approved Figueroa in there, so the concern's already been sort of addressed, so taking it out of the overlay doesn't excite me all that much either, but
Isn't that part of the Green Bay structure also?
yeah,
It
so
goes
the
around the
building
corner.
itself, yeah, it does seem like it's all the same building. and-
We tried to get him to, Persky, Seymour Persky was the owner of that property, and it's a beautiful building.
It is.
With wonderful limestone carvings, and we tried very hard to get him to landmark that building.
Can I suggest that we, just for sake of moving on, that we leave it at tower and move on?
Okay, fine.
So the 2 Tower in Hubbard Woods, and then in Elm would just be Savoci. Okay?
It is hard because it's all one big building.
And Figueroa said that they would have active windows, and their one window is
They're chairs.
dead.
Chairs.
Well, and there's the one, it's a blank space, and it's really bad, so. It's a nice shade, but it's all white.
That's what they all tell the
Yeah.
Plan Commission.
Well,
Okay,
they, but, yeah.
So
Let's
then-
move on to this attachment A.
So then we worked on the land use table. So we did a couple of things in addition to uses. We looked at combining uses, consolidating in hopes of making them a little more clearer and simpler to understand, the types of uses by category. We've updated some terminology, a shipping, mailing, or printing center as an example, a UPS facility, where they have or a FedEx store, where they may also offer some office supply or office activities such as using their copiers or fax machines. So we made some of those changes to the land use table. And then we made changes based upon our conversations here. So
David, the only, I have 2 questions. One is, why are taxidermy shops a permitted use? I've always wondered about that one. But then also, I don't get
78?
78,
It's a chemical thing. That's like-
you know.
May want to limit the amount of taxes.
Yeah, right. exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Right now, it's
pretty
a permitted
And we
use.
have so many buildings.
Yeah, right.
We're over with taxidermy shops. We are just swimming in them. and tanning salons. But then the other one is, I didn't get the interior decorating services, what you were doing, because you did something and then there's something on 79, and then there's something on 83, or no, wait, where is it? 82.
Yeah, so this is one we struggle with in terms of, currently you can have interior decorating with retail inventory on display. So what does retail inventory on display mean to you? A vase on a counter? 2 vases? Do you need to be open 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 1 day a week? And so what we tried to restructure it is that we think the intent is that there's a retail store that offers interior design services. So you may be a furniture store and offer interior design. You may be a window covering store and offer interior design. So we try to structure it that way. If you're an interior designer, then it's a special use. So it's more of trying to clarify the distinction. That was the purpose of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kaler,
Yeah.
Kaler, yeah.
And we've recently had another example that we've spent a period of time trying to get her. She was an interior designer who said she was going to do some retail sales, and over time, what she has provided to us, okay, if you do that, you'd be a permitted use, but it took us a long time. But basically, she appears to be a home goods store and offers interior design now, but that's not how this is another one in Hubbard Mills. So the idea is we want them to demonstrate that you're really a retail store with interior design versus an interior designer offering a few items for sale.
So just to finish voice my opinion, I liked it. I think it's fine in terms of the changes. Now that I understand the interior decorating, I would propose taking a taxidermy shop and make it special use. Not that we've ever had a request for one. I just think it's weird that we've got it sitting out there as a permitted use. Yeah, where bowling alleys are a special use and stuff like that.
Just in terms of the tanning salon, I might put it as a permitted use, and the reason is because people don't use tanning beds anymore, they get sprayed. It's sort of a salon thing, and there's a lot of traffic that happens in the city and in Evanston and all that. I mean, like, does anyone know what Benefit is? Cosmetics? Right? So everyone goes and they sell things as well, so I'm not sure you want to make it like hard to do it. The other thing that's happening in the city is the cryotherapy places. Do you guys know about cryotherapy? See, she's nodding again.
Freezing fat
No
thing?
idea.
No, it's not freezing fat. It's like it helps you when you have, I've never done it, I would never do it, but when you have like aching, whatever, you go into these freezing cold things, and they're all over the city now. And I would say cryotherapy, I would put it on there since
Can
you're
you just
making.
like go outside?
Yeah, you can.
Take your clothes off and go outside. And give me
And
20
no, it's a
bucks.
practical one. Don't spend what you don't need to spend that. But I'm just saying, like, there are other, and so this is in the category of like, this is what keeps the city traffic up. Like, people are going to cryotherapy and going to get their spray tans all the time and going to Benefit and all that. Those are heavy use in areas in the city. So how do we
So
allow?
Ann, is it like
Yeah.
a personal training?
It's not personal training, it's like
It's a health-
therapeutic.
It's a spa service more
Is it a
than
spa
Yeah.
service?
Right.
And actually, the tanning, if it's not the tanning beds, because when the ordinance was made, it was about the tanning beds. That would
Yeah,
be
it's
a
not
spa
tanning
service.
beds
It would be
anymore.
a spa service.
Okay.
Explain why all the numbers, all those orange on 83, looks like it's been.
Because it's been
eliminated.
consolidated.
Oh, just consolidated.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Papers
And on the
back
same
on
page,
page
what is the definition of a co-working space?
Well, a co-working
For me,
space is
I'm
on,
co-working with my other office person.
But isn't that the same thing as an office?
Yeah, how is that
We
different
work,
at all?
we work.
It is
But isn't that
different
an
because
office?
it's the
It's in
turnover,
the-
it's, the way it's used is a lot different, John.
There's more traffic.
Oh,
there's a
It
definite,
is.
1
It
hour.
really
It's like
is.
What
1
page
hour.
is the definition?
You're in,
85?
you're out, you go for
They
a
plug
meeting.
in their,
Like 5 people could share the same office, so you'd have
so it's
someone
sort of
there
like
every day.
I understand, but
can we require that they sell coffee? Then it's a
Well, no, they would go
Then it's a
down.
coffee shop.
That's medical, that's medical.
Really, and Penny, just so you know, the way that these things have evolved is a lot of people got tired of working in Starbucks.
Gotcha.
And so what this is just that environment without all of
Cool.
the clutter.
That's
And they
awesome.
really are cool
So
spaces.
just thinking outside the box a little bit, I've got a realty company that rents out the desks because that's how I operate my realty company. So those are all basically all coworkers, aren't they? I mean, we really need to be clarified if you don't want to get into this situation.
Well, the question is whether we work, anybody can come in, right? If
No,
not-
you have to be a member.
You have a subscription.
Yeah.
But anybody can subscribe.
Sure. And any realtor.
Yeah, but I
can-
mean, it's not.
Any
but
realtor
so
can
you're an
apply
employee,
and.
aren't you?
No, some of them rent the desk.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's no industry specificity.
But you don't have, no, I mean, you wouldn't rent, when I first started my business in 1989, at 500 Davis in Evanston, they had a place called the Home Office, which is real similar to Regis, where you actually possess an office within a co-working space. These are, nobody possesses an office in these. It's all just like, oh, that office is available, I'm gonna hop in there and
I
work.
just don't see how that's any different in an office, from a zoning standpoint.
The industry sees the difference of it.
Yeah, right.
Right, or what's the difference?
Just calling it a coworker space.
If
may
we're
not
saying
be
that
definite.
office space doesn't generate retail traffic and restaurant use,
Yeah.
how different is the co-working? If they're coming in for an hour, they may leave right away. I mean,
They are good traffic generators.
It's not, yeah,
So
it's
is
not
it-
a
so is a
specific
good office
industry.
space.
But
So
as
is
we
good
work,
office, right,
Yeah.
which is why some offices are
But
good.
there's
are
true-
those
there's true-
that you, anybody, it's not industry specific, it's anybody, you know, anybody with any business is.
No, it's for guys like me that work at home.
Oh, yeah, I'm just
And
trying,
wanna-
I'm just
and
thinking
wanna get
aloud
out of
for,
the-
as a
get out of the house for a
definition.
couple
No, I
hours
get
and-
it, but I mean, to define it, so why, how would you define it differently?
I think the definition
It's
of
co-working
used by
space.
individuals and not by authority.
Or a
Then if you
specific
end up
industry.
finding somebody that's networking in a company there, you
right, I'm gonna just try and get, I mean, I'm for anything because I'm against the whole thing to begin with. But, and I just don't get the difference of the office space versus the co-working office.
So what are you saying, that it should be a special use in the overlay
It
district?
should be consistent with office space, I would think.
Which would be a special use in the overlay district.
But I'm obviously a minority on this
So
whole
it
thing.
it is a hot use and something that, I mean, right now.
I'm a little bit on board with John here, because just calling it.
I'll write
You
that
would
down
love
today.
a co-working space in Winnetka. You would use it just like I would.
But see, you and I have a concept.
And there's a lot of us
What it
around.
looks like.
Yeah.
And I think just saying coworker space, well, I could just rent a space on the storefront, put up a bunch of cubes, boom, now I got a coworker.
Right.
My co-working space, I just go to Reprise.
That's the idea.
But I think there's something that, from a look and feel point of view, I mean, I could be I'm gonna pick on financial planners, sir, right? I could set up a lot of financial planners and just say, all right, we're gonna, this is our
Co-working
touchdown
space.
space.
Because I'm pretty
You don't
sure,
get the turnover.
David,
co-
can you find a way to define
yeah,
that?
I would think in the city of Chicago.
Well, we have a
co-working
definition
WeWorks
for
and
it, but I
WeWork
think his
Regis
issue is,
is
should it
business
be allowed,
office space. That's the zoning district.
Yeah.
should it be
It's not
allowed by
specific.
right or by special use?
A special use would allow us to kind of understand how it's actually gonna be.
Within the overlay district.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Um,
Now we're just making it tougher for someone who wants to open up office space to co-working.
Well, but then the
By
question
adding
is,
another
In the
district.
overlay, in the overlay.
Yeah, okay.
In the
and how do we, and can we make our be friendly?
Well, it's permitted overlay, yeah, okay.
You might be able to
This is
just
gonna-
beef up the definition a little bit.
This is gonna sound ridiculous, but we allow animal grooming services, but we don't allow people grooming services as a permitted use in the overlay.
Well, people are very animals.
Well, I'm just looking at what we allow.
You
and
drop
don't
the
allow.
animal and then you go do things in the area, whereas if you're getting the service, you're just sitting there in the
Well,
chair.
I'm just bringing it up if it's okay.
Question
Just make
mark.
sure it's okay. Just wanna make sure, if it's okay with you guys.
What if we beefed up the co-working space definition by just describing the typical user as
Transient.
someone who's self-employed, a telecommuter, or a freelance worker? It's just to make the intent of it clear,
And not industry
as
specific.
opposed to, this is a place for Coldwell Banker to
And
tap
not
into.
industry specific. I mean, a real
Right.
estate person could come in and do it.
So, but if you cater
Or-
to telecommuters,
Broker
freelancers,
probably
self-employed.
would, but somebody affiliated with a firm
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, I mean, just a one person with.
But what Chris was saying is that
Only real
in this
estate.
particular co-working definition, it's not meant that you're getting this office, the same office every day,
No.
8 hours a day.
And so
you
that's the
cannot rent
hoteling model.
an individual office.
No.
You can only rent a desk from time to time that is shared by other co-workers.
Yeah.
I think we're just getting too far into it. Let that come as a special use if it already happens.
But wouldn't the special use limit the amount of that could be in the overlay district? I mean, if it's permitted, then you could have
As many as.
Hey, John, on top of 85, I mean, what would you change on that definition, on the top of page 85?
So,
Or Andy?
I would just add a few things to make the intent clear. So, office space hosted using like a hoteling model, maybe clarify that, either on a membership basis or a daily
Yeah,
use
there you go.
basis. Intended primarily for individuals who are self-employed, telecommuters, or freelance workers. Just to make the intent clear, because you have the ability to interpret our own code consistent with its intent,
And not
and so if someone tries to
business-specific.
game it, I think that's
I
the
think-
concern.
I think by saying non-business specific, because if they start defining what the businesses, then that changes the nature of the.
You mean not industry specific?
Yeah.
It's for individual users, not for
But
business
do we
users.
want that as a permitted use in the overlay? I'm fine with it in C2s, but I would almost think of it as a special use in the overlay.
Well, I thought the process today was to like make the process easier.
Yeah.
We just added another use in the definition. Why isn't it just office?
But if we make it permitted, that
And
makes
let
it
them come
easier.
to us as a,
Because that's why we were defining it differently for the overlay
Yeah.
district, so it isn't.
So
So
we
a
can
good
make it
example is
permitted.
the rug store, I still think would make it an amazing co-working space.
Right.
Because of, don't kill me, Louise.
And we don't want to open up.
But, you put a lot of people there that would come and go during the course of the day, because you don't go to a co-working space and sit there for
There's
8
foot
hours.
traffic.
You're in, you're out, you're in, you're
well,
out.
you might if you're a Winnetka resident that just wants to have an office.
Well, when my wife is
There.
driving me nuts, then I want to get out for
Yeah.
4 hours.
That's tough.
But
I have to go
here-
home.
here's the difference between an office.
Watching?
The difference between an
I'll say
office.
we're face to face.
The difference generally between an office generally and what we're talking about, the
Well, I'm
hoteling,
getting to that one.
is the hoteling space actually gets used, right?
Right.
People go, the problem with the real estate offices is they get this huge chunk of office that they don't really actually
Right,
use.
right.
They get like a big empty place with, like, everyone's got their little desk for when they do a closing, and they're there for 10 minutes a week. It doesn't serve what we're trying to do.
No, no,
But the
mine's-
hoteling space is like Starbucks, but more comfortable space.
Right.
And typically it's for when you have meetings, if you're a stay-at-home worker and you want a professional environment to have a meeting in, then you go to these spaces.
Right.
So
And
you get the
maybe-
conference room,
But would
and there are
they-
many small conference
Would you
rooms
want
inside of them.
unlimited amounts of that in the overlay district?
I would, I mean, I would make it permitted, and if
Because
we
if
think
it's
we've got a
permitted-
problem like we do at the
Yeah.
taxidermy shops, we could do it later.
So again, going,
You know?
and I'll play the other side. If I was
know,
part of
just
the
rein it in.
chamber,
Special use.
if I was part
I'm
of
tired
Chamber
of
of
seeing all
Commerce
those
that
deer
does want
strap
office,
like,
Xfinity is.
if I was part of Chamber of Commerce that does want office space in my retail district, I wouldn't want the WeWork either, or this. Make it a
See,
special use.
I'm kind of making a special use in the overlay. C2 is fine.
So why even
Okay.
create the
I
new
can vote
district
for
for
that.
that? Why create the new name? It's office space.
Well,
It's not.
No.
It is not
If
office
it's office
space.
space, then, then I've got.
then you get the empty desks.
Maybe.
Or you get just an office-based business.
Yeah.
Then you get something else.
But when you've got active workspaces that people are paying to actually use the space, it's gotta be
There's
used.
one in downtown Wilmette, too.
They're in
Yeah, it's probably office
Evanston,
space.
there's several of
It's
them.
not it's not a co-working
It
zoning
is a
district.
co-working space.
Not a zoning district.
Service on
Oh.
site.
Why create the zoning district for an office?
Well, because
Because we don't
they're
want an
comfortable
office.
with having
Right,
offices
so
in their
The
downtown.
consensus is there would be a special use in the overlay for.
So why even create it?
Okay, I just want
We
to
want to
throw,
signal our desire to have it.
yes.
Okay, all right.
Right.
As a
Make it
special
easy.
use, come back in 3 months.
Permitted use in the C2
You
district.
know, in general,
We're trying to signal here that we're open for business.
right.
Okay. I just have one question on, since we're adding and refining uses, and I know this isn't the night for it, but, we're going to have to deal would legalize cannabis at some point in time. Peter looking at me, I'm sorry.
reported on this.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah,
Is in last week's
I
weekly
didn't read
briefing.
it, I'm sorry.
yeah.
I was tied up with the,
You
should I
already-
keep my mouth shut?
It was already voted on.
Okay.
We voted to have.
In residential. So. We will probably have a study session on this as this moves through the legislature in this next term.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I'll just leave it alone, but I
It's
mean.
the cultivation areas that we may want.
Cultivation is an issue.
We could make it a school project.
Everyone gets 5 or 10 plants.
Any other questions, comments on the use list?
Good job.
Good job.
Thank you, David. Sorry we lost our focus.
It is 9:15.
Yeah.
Is if you want to condense even more in terms of like
Sorry, Peter.
all clothing repair, you know,
Took
like
a meeting with the
condense
Park
the
District
shoe
in
repair and the dress, I
36.
mean, if you want to do all of that in one. I'm not sure why they're separated, and then you've got like the furniture, all your furniture services. I don't know, I mean, to me, they're all.
So like tailor shop and shoe repair?
I mean, all of those, yeah, any sort of, whenever you're talking about repairing, you know, clothing, you know, your personal item, and then whenever you're talking about repairing anything relative to furniture and, you know, houseware, I mean, you know, so I don't know, I would encourage you to group those together more, because it's, when we start parceling them out, it just makes everybody's eyes glaze over, it doesn't really make sense anymore. Better be thinking more as categories
As a
of
group?
uses. Yeah, I think it, and again, I think it's friendlier to incoming businesses, because they can see where they fit in as, rather than, am I a shoe repair, or am I a, you know?
Or a cobbler.
Yeah, or am I a handbag, you know, they're categories, they're general categories.
Okay. Can work on that. So we're going to make taxidermy a special use in the C2 district?
That's my objection, it sounds like I lose on that.
We could eliminate it, I don't know.
In May, when I retire, that is gonna be the number one thing on the compass.
Music festival, got rid of.
Got rid of
What do they
taxidermy.
call the places that sell
Beef stuffing.
taxidermy already made, not that that do it, but
You can
what do they
sell
call
all
that
that
when you
in
have
one.
the curiosity shops, you know, they have them.
The fish on the
We
wall
have
that
one.
sings.
Curiosity shop.
In Hubbard Woods, right?
It's a
What's his
very
name,
curious
Ken
shop.
Moncton or something like
All
that?
right, this is really degrading fast.
And then co-working will make a special use. Any comments or questions on the definitions?
David, I didn't understand what you were saying on number 4. Is this what you're talking about, the definition?
Oh, those are the special use standards.
Or are you going to go there on these?
Yep. Any,
You think you're gonna go there?
you're all just going to ask a question and then agree, right?
I just didn't understand 4.
So no questions or comments on the definitions?
No, they were good.
Okay, we may,
I like that we got rid of the utensils thing. Good job.
okay, but the difference between those two restaurant definitions, we may need to work on a little more, given the changing food industry and what's pre-prepared and what's prepared on site. And, it seemed like the biggest concern about that was we liked certain fast casual restaurants and not others.
I like all of them.
So,
You wanna sit on-
okay, so let's go to the special use standards. And Bob, you said you had a question on number 4?
Just give me an example of what you're saying on number 4. Versus
What page are you?
I'm on page
75.
75.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't see the change with the...
So it would be, the example would be the furniture store that also has interior design services, that the interior design service wouldn't be in the front, but the retail display would need to be in front. So it's talking about a use that may have different activities. You know, it may have an office activity, it may have a service aspect, it may have a retail sales aspect. Well, the retail sales or the retail merchandising has to occur up by the window.
Much like what we talked about tonight.
That's
really
Right,
good. Right.
you know, the
Right.
private service needs to be to the rear, and the retail has to be out in front, where anybody can walk in and
So is that what that's saying, that the actual retail part of the business has to be up front, or the display has to be up front?
The retail display.
So, but the store could be in the back.
Well, I think of the retail display as the store,
The
the
merchandise.
display of merchandise, the goods. So not just a display.
How is that
Oh,
a
so
change?
what you're saying, Bob, is let's say today, they just had a display in the window, but you had to walk through the banquet space to get
To
through
get to the store, that's kind of the way I read that, but.
We just reworded it to, because we were having a hard time explaining it to people. how
Can
it
you
was
add
worded.
restaurant to that list? Just in anticipation of exactly what we had tonight. So if it contemplates, proposes or contemplates providing a mix of use areas such as retail, merchandise display, restaurant, a catering, general office, but, you know, then the next part is any proposed retail merchandise display areas or restaurant service areas shall be concentrated.
Yeah, right.
But the display areas, I have to say.
Maybe you just get rid of the display part and you just say the
Retail
retail
merchandise.
merchandise area.
Yeah.
Should
There
be in
you
the
go.
front,
Right.
which is the
So
way it
strike
is
the
now.
word display.
Which is the way it is now,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think we've, page 103, the second to last page, about the middle, there's standards for special uses. Number 2 kind of addresses the noise we just talked about with the banquet hall.
I'm sorry, 103?
103, second to the last page.
Sorry.
Number 2, it says that the special use should not be substantially injurious to the use or enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity.
Except we're not saying it through special use.
I'm sorry, which number?
We don't want to make it.
Number 2.
Can we,
Okay, thank you.
that's from the previous staff
Yeah,
report.
I'm just saying, you know, that's kind of covers something, I guess it's not a special use. But
I'm sorry, which one was?
Some- Number 2, the special use shall not be substantially injurious to the adjacent buildings. About the middle of the page, number 2.
Oh, sure,
Right,
Yeah.
including residential.
No, I'm saying, that's already existing ordinance.
Okay.
There's got to be some standard use of that, some language like that for
So.
not, normally permitted uses too, I would hope.
So we're just for the special use, I mean, for the C2, we would be adding in the additional A and B, right? So you'd have your normal standards, which are a little vaguer, more vague.
Other than that, they were just cleaned up.
okay. So next steps,
You're going to bring us an ordinance.
okay? And the public hearing's going to occur before the village council,
Yes.
okay? We won't take it down to an advisory body.
And who gets notified of the hearing? All adjacent owners affected by the change?
No, this is the ordinance.
So it's village-wide.
I think what John is saying is, should the businesses
We
who
should
are
outreach, reach out.
affected by this, should we reach out to them?
To the property owners?
Property owners.
This is,
Yeah, I think we should.
Those the 3 that you identified in terms of change.
yeah,
Well,
as well as
if you're changing any permitted uses that became
special.
special uses, any of those buildings affected should
Should
be
we just do a
notified.
notice to the commercial?
Well, I don't know.
So-
Peter would have to.
It's not legally required, but what do we do locally?
To be,
Is that really required to change someone's zoning on their property?
When you're making a
Provide notice.
text amendment, you don't have
It's a
to,
generally applicable provision, so it's not like you're rezoning a piece of property. That doesn't mean you can't do it, I'm just saying.
so we could, as a courtesy, not code required, as Peter is saying, send a letter to all property owners within the C2 and overlay.
That's the right thing.
Yep.
We should.
And it doesn't have to be really all the flower
I won't read
language,
it
it's a
anyway.
notification.
No, but they should be given notice.
Except the taxidermy shop. They're gonna-
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he's gonna come after me.
Yeah, we'll have to sit behind the Kevlar.
So that's a process task in
Oh,
itself.
yep.
All right, I think we've extended the utility of our commentary.
We have somebody that we have to approve here.
Yes.
An appointment we have to approve.
We all read about it though, so it's fine.
Okay, item number 12. Boy, this is a long meeting for us. I have an appointment for the January 15th regular meeting, Kim Handler to replace Carl Lane on the Zoning Board of Appeals for a full term. May I have?
So moved.
May I have a motion? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Item number 13, closed session. There is none. And item number 14, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Can we,